Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was betrayed and became the last hope of the Multiverse movie. Before we start, please go support Phantom Eyes 90 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made, there will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Issei is a male. Prologue. Capital of Lilith. In the underworld, an event of exorbitant magnitude was taking place, as it turned out that a massive wedding was going to take place. The city of Lilith was dressed elegantly and beautifully, as this event would mark an era of peace and prosperity in the alliance. Demons, fallen and fallen angels were decorated as a festival of massive proportions in the streets of the most important capital of the underworld. Everyone looked amazed at the bridal details in the old buildings, in the lighting beacons, everything promised to be an event that the inhabitants and invited factions would never forget. Suddenly everyone saw two carriages pulled by pale horses parade down the main avenue, the first carriage black as ebony, very small compared to the second which had very feminine touches and is more elongated similar to a limousine. Everyone screamed with excitement because they knew the groom was riding in the black carriage and his soon-to-be wives were traveling in the female carriage. It seems everyone was waiting for this day, said Akeno Himejima very happy while holding a white uchikik. It was normal that everyone was waiting for this day, said Irina very happy while wearing a traditional wedding dress. I can't believe I'm going to marry the prospect of becoming Lucifer, said Asia while holding back her tears with a smile. And apart from that, he's also the new Seekvaira, a good man who will give us strong children, Asia, said Zenobia also wearing a somewhat provocative wedding dress. It's a shame Issei Naya broke up with us after Sirzechs was removed from his position, said Kuroka very disappointed in her former love, he showed solidarity with a demon who had no power whatsoever. Not only him, but also your younger sister and especially Rias, said Sona Citri, while the girls in her entourage nodded while wearing their wedding dresses. Milikas also wanted to go with her father, but, fortunately, we managed to keep him. As his new mothers, we must educate him to be an exemplary demon before our society, said Yusaka, who dressed the same as Akeno. Haven't you had problems with Kunu after that day Sirzechs was dismissed? Said Tiamat very worried. That girl is still angry, said Yusaka very angry, she hasn't spoken to me since my breakup with that pervert, nor did she bother to come witness my wedding with our man, but one day the law of ice will end and she will accept her new father, even if it is by force if I have no other choice. Rias Tan did not know how to take advantage of this great opportunity, said Seraphil with her childish attitude, she knows that it would be a great honor to marry a powerful man and could give renown to her family. But she preferred to sympathize with her brother and also continue her relationship with Issei. Was said, even her own family tried to convince her to leave Issei and become the girlfriend of our dear Jonas. And of course, it cost her her title of heiress, how sad for our ex-friend Ravel said arrogantly. And how good that the Red Empress and our harem sister Mio got rid of that hopeless pervert, Penemu said with disgust while looking at Aridid, who when mentioning her former bear, and thanks to our future husband, the next Lucifer, will clear your name. Don't remind me of that pervert, Mio said very irritated, you don't know how much it pains me to be called Op-Eye Dragon, thanks to fate I fell into a competent bear, but above all with his current power, he can match me in my time when Alba and I were still on Earth. I can't wait for the big wedding night that awaits us at a resort in the Bahamas that the Amon clan reserved for us after the wedding, said Gabriel very excitedly. Calm down. Calm down, said a silver-haired girl who dressed more strikingly than the others, remember that we must present good manners before the society of the factions, that the problems of the past do not have to affect us on our big day, okay girls. Hi, Grayfia-sama, said the girls in the limousine. Indeed, Grayfia Lucifuge was going to marry Jonas Amon. You will ask what happened. Well, it turns out that in the battle against the Trahexa, Sirzechs Gremory, formerly Lucifer, to activate the seal that would contain the beast of the apocalypse and that no leader would be sealed, sacrificed all his power so that the beast released by the grandson of the ancient Mau, Rizalvam Livan Lucifer, would not do more destruction around him. But the consequences for the eldest son of the Gremorys was that he is now a demon without power and above all, he had rejuvenated. But the society of the underworld, instead of thanking him as the hero he deserved to be, he was only the object of ridicule and criticism for being only a demon without power. The first to act were the demonic council when they saw that the Redeed was no longer someone powerful, they began a smear campaign against him, the people who were supposedly his allies and his family began to turn their backs on him in such a way that the responses he received from the rejuvenated Redeed were rude and more from his parents, his younger sister's entourage, and especially his wife. One day he saw his things at the doors of the Gremory castle as a sign of exile, and with his heart broken, knowing that his family did not support him, he decided to retire to the human world. Aridid only found refuge in his younger sister Rias Gremory, who was really distressed by the treatment given to her older brother, and very disappointed by the actions of his entourage against Sirzechs. She had given him a room in the Hyoudou mansion, something that Issei and Kaneko Taoju welcomed the then powerless Mau. But things got worse one day, and it was a point of no return in Sirzechs' life, as in the lives of Issei, Rias and Kaneko. Well, one day they were summoned to the Mao's castle, but only to give the worst news to the two descendants of Gremory and the Seekvaira of that time. It was only to notify them that for Sirzechs he was removed from his position as Lucifer in a humiliating way by the council, and especially by Seraphol Leviathan, but what hurt the most was when Grayfia handed him some papers with a grimace of total disgust for the deed, that when Sirzechs saw them he couldn't help but cry. They were divorce papers. Milika, seeing her father's reaction, couldn't help but run to comfort him, but Gremory clan guards prevented the youngest of the Gremory from reaching his father and hugging him. Milika screamed to let him go with his father, but he was taken away due to the indifference of his mother, his grandparents and those present. For Issei, that his then harem had decided to end their relationship with the brown-haired boy, his parents immediately took the opportunity to run him out of the house, and saying that Mio demanded the release of Issei's body, since her pride was stained by such an aberrant nickname, that she earned thanks to Issei, which was agreed to by the council, obtaining his release, leaving the brown-haired boy very badly injured. Rias, for her part, received the resignation of her entire entourage, with the exception of Kaneko, upon receiving the pieces of Akeno, Asia, Gaspar, Kiba, Zenobia and Roswis. Rias was also notified that she had lost her last name for supporting Sirzechs. After receiving such bad news for the younger Gremory and for Issei, right in front of them, Akeno introduced her new fiancé, the heir of the Amon clan, and later who would succeed Sirzechs, Jonas Amon. Rias, Kaneko and Issei saw their former entourage, friends and fiancés go to hug their new fiancé, but the one who received the worst surprise was Sirzechs when he saw Grayfia plant a kiss on his nose, and especially Issei when he saw how the sacred gear was given to Amon's heir under a malicious smile from those present, except for Michael, Azazel, Ajuka, Vali, Biku. Ophis and Shiva, who looked with great contempt at their allies how they treated those who owed them their lives and those who gave meaning to it. The brides of Jonas Amon, the new prospect to take over the position of the former Mao Sirzechs Gremory, announced their wedding within a month, which the council approved, and ending the meeting, they declared exile to Issei, Rias, Kaneko and Sirzechs from the underworld and any property of the Gremory, including the residents of the Hyoudou, which if they set foot, the heir of Amon, would personally kill them, with the approval of the Gremory patriarchs. Without further ado, Issei, Rias, Kaneko and Sirzechs left the underworld for the last time, helpless. No one knew what became of them for by the supernatural, except for those mentioned who still kept news about them secret. Fortunately, in the month they were planning the grand wedding in the underworld, those who did not agree with the treatment of Sirzechs learned that the four exiles were able to have asylum with an old friend of Issei and were able to settle in a city adjacent to Kuo, where Sirzechs now works part-time as a waiter in a small restaurant, while Rias and Issei were attending the university of that city, thanks to the influence of Ajuka and Azazel. Kaneko was in her third year of high school. Returning to the wedding, they had arrived at a Gothic cathedral where the first to descend was the still heir of the Amon clan, Jonas, wearing a black suit while his expression remained serious, dressed in an elegant suit for his wedding. He decided to enter the demonic cathedral to await his fiancées, of whom were the four most beautiful and strongest women of the factions. Jonas Amon. Suddenly the other stretch limousine stopped, and from which the brides and soon-to-be wives descended, led by Grayfia, the next bearer of the title of Lucifer. Everyone in Lilith screamed with excitement at seeing such celebrities about to get married. Many men of the supernatural envied Jonas Amon for the luck he carried by marrying those women coveted throughout the world, especially the Red Dragon Empress Mio. All the women screamed with envy for the women dressed in white who would marry a totally powerful and handsome man above all under the complacent gaze of the demonic clans of Gremory, Citri, Phoenix and Amon. The wedding ceremony took place normally, all the guests showed a look of complacency, in some cases like the Hyoudou seeing their daughter Asia get married, they could not, but the only ones who showed a look full of disgust were Michael and Azazel, with Vali and Biku they wanted to break the face of their rivals' ex-fiancés, especially their partner Alba, seeing how their rival Mio replaced her best carrier with a pretty face, and was more than willing to kill her if she had the opportunity. Ajuka did not even bother to go to the wedding because she did not like to pretend to be happy about this. The least she could do out of respect for Sirzechs was to be a hypocrite with that society that he had saved once in the civil war, and this last one against the Trihiksa, and the only way they rewarded him was to literally send him to hell. Ophis especially wanted to kill the bitches who had changed her Issei, especially Mio, but she thought that would be falling into their same game and she had to suppress her urge to kill them. If there is no one who doesn't agree that I hold this wedding, speak now or shut your shut forever. Jonas and Issei's ex-harem looked at all the wedding guests but saw that Azazel, Shiva, Michael, Ophis, Vali, Arthur, Fenrir and Biku got up. That made the brides pale, especially Penemu, who was about to complain to Azazel, but just by looking at her, it was more than obvious that he was leaving her silent and she decided to leave the wedding. Gabriel was about to cry when he saw that his brother did not agree with the wedding, but he only looked at his sister with a look full of great disappointment, turning his back on her, and also decided to leave said demonic cathedral. Vali and Biku, seeing Kuroka and Lefei, were about to be horrified to see that both of them were going to complain, but Jew. Both of them spat as a sign of disrespect to their two former companions and proceeded to withdraw, but with Ophis, they felt the instinct to kill so intense her gaze focused especially on Mio, Tiamat, but especially on Grayfia. She had so many desires to tear them apart at that very moment, but a hand on her shoulder calmed her, and she saw that Seekvaira Agares, Roy Gun Bulfelger, Laisha Astaroth, Lavinia Remy and Iriuka Glaciolabolas had taken her side. Looking with a wide gesture of hatred against the now wives of the Mao, Lucifer also decided to withdraw, turning their backs on them as a sign of disrespect, which enraged the aforementioned and especially the heir of the Amon clan. "Where are you going?" Amon shouted when he saw more people retreat and stopped in his tracks. "It is mandatory to stay at my big wedding." "Who do you think you are, giving me orders, you bucking demon?" Ophis said with a dead expression, leaving Jonas pale. "You know that in less than a second I can make you food for the rats of the underworld." Ophis-chan, calm down, please, said Asia, very fearful to see the dragon of the infinity very furious. "And the nun who only dedicates herself to crying had to speak," said Roygun with great disgust. "Pay more respect for the wife of the next Lucifer," shouted Zenobia, intervening for Asia. "Respect? You demand something that they lost since they despised the great efforts of Sirzechs Sama and especially Issei and Rias, bunch of ungrateful carrion witches," shouted Seekvaira, very angry. "That pervert is a good-for-nothing," shouted Akeno, very irritated. "A good-for-nothing and also a pervert," Laisha said, looking with great hatred at the hybrid. "Tell me, who was the one who made you reconcile with that idiot of your father, and also a pervert? Who was the one who insinuated herself by showing her breasts to him like the total degenerate that she is?" That insult hit Akeno's pride hard, but in that, everyone felt a couple of auras at the wedding altar. Grayfia and Jonas were getting enraged by such an offense towards their harem sister and wife respectively. "I will not allow them to dirty my moment with a man I really love. You will pay for insulting my wife." Both demons launched magical attacks against Laisha, but I'll take care of it, Ophis said stoically, and neutralized without difficulty said attacks from both demons and fleetingly went towards Jonas, leaving his girlfriends impressed by the speed of the dragon lowly goddess, and boom. Ophis connected a blow to the face of Amon's heir, sending him crashing into a wall. "Damn lizard!" Grayfia shouted, preparing a spell, but shum. Ophis was in front of Grayfia, who had literally frozen before the power of the goddess, and immediately Ophis grabs Grayfia by the neck and begins to suffocate her, while Grayfia tries in vain to break free from the dragon's grip. "Release her immediately." Penemu and Gabriel shouted, preparing attacks of light, just like Jonas's harem, preparing any attack against the goddess of infinity, but one more step and this ungrateful woman will turn her to ashes. Ophis shouted, "This is a warning to the biblical, Yaokai and Asgardian factions. When peace is interrupted by a new threat and their forces are considerably decimated, do not seek support from the dragons or the other factions, but especially, do not seek help from the people who saved your lives and paid you in a miserable way. If your society is about to die, here is the main cause of their downfall and her followers who condemned them." Ophis shouted, displaying Grayfia like a newly married animal that was still trying to free itself. Everyone saw how Ophis had sent a message that predicted nothing good for the underworld. The goddess of infinity throws Grayfia into a wall, crashing hard. Jonas's other girlfriend stepped back because they knew that if he could quickly neutralize Grayfia, they wouldn't give him any challenge. Ophis proceeded to meet with Roygun, Seekvaira, Lavinia, Laisha and Iriuka, who were still showing a wide grimace of intense hatred against the wives of the next Lucifer. "We are out of here," Ophis ordered, and in that she opens a dimensional rift where the 5 companions of the Dragon of Infinity entered, but this being the last to enter, said rift, she looked sideways at Mio and Tiamat. "If you get close even by mistake to my little dragon or his friend, I assure you that I will enjoy tearing you both apart and in my eyes. For abandoning Issei Hyoudou, you no longer hold your titles of Celestial Dragon and Dragon Queen, you are stripped of your titles for all eternity." Entering the dimensional rift. At Ophis's words, Tiamat and Mio fell to their knees and began to cry inconsolably because being stripped of their titles was a great shame. Everyone at the wedding was left in a tense and silent atmosphere that you could practically hear the breathing of those present. "That bitch from the infinite, she'll pay for it," said Jonas, cleaning himself of the debris, very angry. "Jonas," and said Asia, bellowing as she proceeded to heal her next husband. Grayfia also sat up, but she had a wound on her forehead that blood had stained her wedding dress. The priest was going to continue, but everyone in Lilith City began to scream in a scandalous manner, but above all an overwhelming magical sensation began to be felt. "What is that energy?" said Gabriel. What is happening?" said Lefei very nervously. "And who decided to act was on the side? I need to know what's happening," shouted Jonas, heading towards the exit of the cathedral when what he saw left him in total shock. "A hand?" Jonas said, very shocked. "A ha 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 ha" was the sound that said hand screamed at the impact of the underworld society. Meanwhile, in another place, 5 people were walking calmly through a rural area when suddenly. A short-haired Reed turned around as if he realized something. "Something's wrong, Nai-sama," said Rias, somewhat intrigued while carrying a handbag. "I don't know, Rias, I had a somewhat disturbing feeling," said Sirzechs, somewhat uneasy, returning to the path. "How curious, I also felt the same," said Issei seriously while they were still walking. "There's no time to think about that, Issei-senpai," said Kaneko stoically while hugging her husband's arm. "We have school homework to do and above all, work at the Ashen Nai-sama family's cafeteria to cover our lodging in Sinkyaru." "As straight as ever, Kaneko-chan," said Ashen, smiling at the Nekomata, "but my family and I still insist that you don't worry about paying rent because you're close to Issei." "No, Ashen-kun, we insist on helping your family who did a lot for us," said Rias, smiling at him. "And it wouldn't be fair for us to take advantage of your parents' kindness," said Sirzechs, smiling a lot. Kaneko was going to speak but. Choo. The sky that was in an orange sunset with violet touches suddenly lit up as if it had only turned to illuminate the sky. What's happening?" said Kaneko, covering her eyes. "What's that light?" said Rias, very uncomfortable. The Shen Phantom, the friend who saved Issei, Rias, Kaneko and Sirzechs from misery, was beginning to open his eyes. "What the hell is that?" shouted Ashen when he saw what he saw. His friends began to open their eyes and what they saw surpassed anything they had seen. A luminous entity with wings around it, mixing cold and warm colors, was what illuminated the sunset sky. The 5 friends were in total shock to see such a creature that had come into their world. "What the hell is happening?" the 5 said when they saw him, but what they didn't know was that not only they could, or rather it wasn't the only dimension that could see the being of pure light that had the intention of enveloping the dimensions that could see him in light, and for that, he had sent his emissaries to defeat the possible enemies that would hinder his mission. And so we begin another adventure where the dimensions are once again compromised and threatened, but the spirits of great fighters who saw their worlds fall before the being that radiates light would support select people with a benevolent and selfless heart, offering them their power and knowledge, turning to defend their world, but above all, to turn. Smash Fighters. Chapter 1. Moments before the wedding. Kyoto. Royal Palace. At the same time as the major event that had now become a terrorist attack in a supernatural Kyoto practically abandoned, all the Yokai inhabitants had come to witness their leader enter into holy matrimony with the heir of the Amon clan. Only the Yokai princess, Kunu, was present in the royal palace. The little kitsune was packing her bags as she was determined to leave her home, since she could not share the same house with Yasaka, first because of what she did to Issei, whom she saw as the father figure she longed for, and also because she had neglected her job as a leader a lot because she ran away to have her moments of romance with a demon. One day the girl and her mother had a strong argument that ended to such an extent that Kunu gave her a wildfire attack against her own mother, injuring her moderately, and ended up retiring to her room, locking herself up, refusing to speak to anyone who was related to the elder kitsune, and had created a fairly strong seal on the door of hers so that no one could enter her room, not even Yasaka could undo said seal. What they did not know is that thanks to the friendship that Kunu has with Ophis, the latter took her to places where she could train. The dragon goddess taught her various tricks and techniques that she practiced while she was supposedly locked in her room without having contact with anyone, and now she had a decent level in combat, something that Yasaka over time and by being lost in lust was rusting over time. And if you wonder how she survived locked up for the month that passed since the announcement of the wedding of Jonas's now harem, and she locked in her room, well, she was always in contact with Issei since her exile, and as she now works in a cafe, he brought her food from Kuo City. She ate from the sushi prepared by the chestnut, hot and sparkling chocolate by Rias, traditional sweets by Kaneko, and of course, traditional Japanese food by Sirzechs. Let's see, yukatas ready, sandals ready, scrolls stolen from the palace library, ready, sakura matchas from Kaneko Onasama ready, said Kunu, looking at the cat-shaped candies in a small container. Well, it's time to leave here. I won't accept anyone other than Issei, as my dad said. Kunu determinedly approached the door of her room, but saw that the seal appeared. The seal activated itself but suddenly saw that it was beginning to crumble. The little kitsune was already on guard in case someone sent by her mother had deactivated the seal. When the seal was completely destroyed, the door opened, revealing a little loli dressed as a doll, but accompanied by a little girl with a blonde hair and a black hair wearing a priestess outfit. Kunu recognized them. Ready, Lilith deactivated the seal, said the loli innocently while speaking in the third person. Well done, my little one, said the raven-haired girl, caressing the head of the Ophis clone, something that made the aforementioned girl smile. Suzaku, Engvald, said Kunu, hugging the aforementioned, something that the kitsune reciprocated the gesture. Did you have no problems entering? Problems? Said Ingvald. I must tell you that the castle is completely abandoned. Are you joking? Kuno said incredulously at what Ingvild was saying. Was that stupid wedding so important that they abandoned their posts? What if they invade Kyoto completely abandoned? And here is the result, said Suzaku. It took us less than 10 minutes to get you out of here. But let's not think about depressing things and let's go to Sekigoro, said Ingvild smiling at him. Issei Naisama will be happy to see you, Kuno Onasama, said Lilith smiling happily. The kitsune smiled. After so long, she could be with her father figure that she longed for so much. She left the royal palace of Kyoto with enthusiasm to start a new life in Sekigoro, but… Hey, what is that? Said Ingvild, seeing a trail of light in the sky. The leader of the Himejima clan examines the wake more closely until she notices something strange about it. It's getting closer little by little, said Suzaku, analyzing the trail of light. Suddenly they saw that the trail of light was approaching the earth. They saw that something mounted on a star was approaching at a fairly fast speed. Here it comes. Take cover. Suzaku shouted, protecting Lilith, while Ingvild did the same with Kuno, and suddenly… Shoo. The wake passed close to the girls and about 30 meters away that wake hit the ground, taking several houses, but they saw that the rider of that star bounced on the ground, falling dry on the earthy floor. Suzaku, Kuno, Lilith and Ingvild went to see what had hit, but suddenly they saw what had arrived and had crashed near there. What is that? Said Ingvild, seeing a tiny pink being with reddish feet. He had a tired and defeated look on his face. Ingvild went to his rescue and immediately carried him. Poor thing, what happened to you? Kuoh was the only thing the creature could say before falling into unconsciousness. We must take him out of here, said Suzaku, looking around in case someone saw the small being fall. If my nefarious mother and her husband see him, they will be capable of killing him, said Kuno, imitating Suzaku. At the Phantom family cafeteria he will recover without problem, said Ingvild, while invoking a transport circle leaving Kyoto, when 5 minutes later, the sky shone incessantly, making the luminous being appear that covered the entire sky of Kyoto with a blinding light. Opening. City of Lilith. Under the strong pressure exerted by the invader, who had the shape of a giant hand and laughed evilly, Jano-Zaman went out to confront the invader. Who the hell are you? Jano shouted very seriously, but inside he was very nervous to see such an enemy. I demand you as the next Mao Lucifer. But the hand began to shake, and as if responding to the air of Amon, it shouted. Ha. Author's note. I share the same gesture as Master Hand. As if mocking him, Janos was annoyed at the hand that was still arching at what the demon said. Miserable, no one makes fun of me, the great Seikvaira and the next overseer of the demonic factions. The demons present cheered because they saw that their next leader would take action against that invading hand. You will know the true power of demons, Hyoudou, Gasper Vladi. Janos shouted while snapping his fingers, and immediately, the former members of Rias Gremory's entourage appeared wearing luxurious clothes as a sign that they had been promoted to high-class demons. They appeared in front of Janos. Go and attack. Hi. The aforementioned shouted, and then Gasper activated his sacred gear, momentarily freezing the hand. Kiba-senpai now. Gasper shouted. At that, the blonde shot out towards the hand wielding a holy demonic sword. Everyone saw the former knight of Rias Gremory raise his sword in an ascending manner. Everyone saw with an arrogant smile an easy victory for the blonde and therefore for Jano-Zaman, but… Ha, shouted the hand that began to move, even with Gasper's magic still applied to it, and in that master hand, takes the form of a fist and heads towards the blonde who could not stop its march. It's not possible. Kiba shouted when he saw the gigantic fist and… Boom. Ah. Kiba complained as he felt the gigantic fist because it not only made the sword come out of his hands, but also broke his arm, and that was not all. He was thrown towards the cathedral like a tennis ball, hitting the highest area, falling to the ground unconscious. Kiba-senpai. He shouted, seeing his partner defeated, but… Asper. Some citizens shouted, pointing above him and the damper, seeing Master Hand on top of him. The vampire was paralyzed and terrified, not knowing what to do. He only saw a white mass falling on him. Boom. Ah. Gasper screamed as he felt a tonnage bearing down on his weak body. Master Hand fell on top of him with his palm, on top of him. He couldn't move his legs or arms, the pain was so much that he fainted from the shock. Seeing such a scene, the city of Lilith began to stir and chaos began to form. The inhabitants decided to run away from there to protect themselves from the hand. Those good for nothing, said Jonas very quietly when he saw that Ria's former servants had fallen easily. Dano's brides left the cathedral in a hurry, and when they saw the hand on an unconscious Gasper and Kiba, but seeing that their big day had now turned into total chaos, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Damn invader. Grayfia shouted angrily while her harem sisters stood next to her. You will pay for ruining our beautiful wedding. We, the wives of the next great Lucifer, will destroy you in the name of our beloved. Seraphil shouted, emanating her aura. All the girls in Issei's former harem were ready to fight. All out of Grayfia shouted, but… Uam. Daiya. The traitors screamed as they felt a shock wave behind them, making them fall to the floor, ruining their wedding dresses. They all felt the cathedral explode behind them and saw the person responsible for such an attack on the demonic cathedral. Another hand. Janos shouted in shock. The ha 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 ha. It was a slightly more psychotic laugh that was heard from the other hand. And in that both hands come closer and in a sign of complicity, they bump fists and face the heir of Amon. "Two hands, you won't beat me, the most powerful Seekvaira in existence," said Jonas, pointing at both hands. The aforementioned girlfriend sighed in love at the bravery, or stupidity, of Amon's heir. Some citizens who saw this cheered and supported their next leader, along with their wives. "Mine," shouted Jonas, while the Red Empress understood what he was going to do. "Hi," said the red deed, starting to turn into reddish light to reach the demon and manifest the boosted gear in her left arm. "Balance breaker." Jonas shouted to make the Seekvaira armor appear. "Now you will see." Damn Invader's dragon shot. Jonas shouted as he launched the attack towards Master Hand, but with a blow, he deflected it, hitting a building. "Damn you," he shouted while. "Boost. X2. We're coming to your help." Janos Naya. Kuroka shouted along with Lefay, Roswis, Irina, and Zenobia ready to attack, but Crazy Hand intervened against them. With his psychotic laughter, on his 5 fingers he made lasers appear attacking Janos' girlfriends. "Aya." They shouted as they felt the power of the hand attack destroying their wedding dresses and leaving them out of combat in less than a minute. "Girls." Grayfia screamed in horror as she saw that her harem sisters were easily defeated. "We will not forgive you," shouted Tiamat, preparing a blue flame accompanied by Akeno, who was preparing rays from her hands, Seraphol ready to unleash her ice magic, Gabriel and Penemu ready with spears, and Ravel with fire. All attack. The women launched their attacks towards Crazy Hand, impacting it, creating a smokescreen. "We did it," said Tiamat, proudly thinking that the hand would not survive against a mixture of her best attacks when. "Ahahahahaja." It was the psychotic laughter of Crazy Hand that rose again to the surprise of the attackers, but more horror to know that the hand did not present any sign of any wound. "That attack should have killed him," Seraphol said, terrified. But they all saw that Crazy Hand was taking flight again and had taken the form of a slap. Seeing that, Sona and her entourage stood in front of their sisters. "Defensive circles now," shouted Sona Citri, and immediately her entire entourage activated their defenses, but not only them, but also Seraphol, Yusaka, Penemu and Gabriel to reinforce it. When Crazy Hand stopped flying and like a missile went towards the demons, who, confident in their defensive strategy, thought they could stop such an attack without a problem. "Where the hell is Saji?" Yusaka shouted exasperatedly. "I don't know," shouted Sona, very furious. "Ever since I rejected him and got engaged with Janos, he has not wanted to obey me anymore and he has behaved quite rude." But when she remembered her pawn, she lost focus on the defense and the inevitable happened. Crash. Hiya. It was the scream that came from Sona and her harem sisters, because Crazy Hand had easily destroyed the defensive magic of the heiress of Citri and her entourage, the Male Leviathan, the strongest Seraphim, the strongest cadre of Grigoro, with the added bonus that they were thrown towards the buildings of the city, impacting and becoming unconscious. At the same time, Master Hand had a close encounter against Janos, some DXD warriors and sub-leaders of the allied factions, and I say close because the gigantic hand had easily defeated most of his opponents. With one blow he had knocked out Razor, Zephyrdol and Dulio. He had stamped on the ground Thor, the Hindu god Indra, Helios and Barakiel. Several soldiers of the factions were lying on the ground defeated in KO. The only one still in combat was Janos, with a balance breaker shattered and his body badly injured. "This stinks," said Janos, very tired when he saw that Master Hand was in perfect condition. "Mio, give me more raises." "I can't give you any more boosts," Mio said in her mind. "Your body can't assimilate the energy of the sacred gear. Any more boosts and it will be fatal for you." "How come you can't give me boosts, miserable dragon?" Janos shouted angrily at the sacred gear. "Anada, why do you call me that?" said the dragon, very distressed. "I'm just taking care of you so that something bad happens to you." "So why did you give all your power to the pervert Issei Hyoudou at the time?" Janos shouted angrily. "Is it a lie that you truly love me? Is your love so great that you abandon your former bearer for me? Is what you tell me a lie, useless dragon? Am I just a mere substitute for you?" Mio, the red dragon, was in shock at how Janos was calling her and yelling at her. She really didn't love him. She was very hurt in her pride by the nickname of Op-Eye Dragon, and what she really wanted was to free herself from Issei and fall into any bearer who could clear her name, even if that meant getting married and giving herself to him. She practically didn't care, but now she saw that because of her foolish honor and pride. She had lost her title and had fallen with a mediocre bearer who saw her as a weapon and could not assimilate even 25% of the power that it granted when Issei, whose body was made of great red's flesh and energy from Ophis herself, the goddess who took away her title of celestial dragon. "Mio, I order you to give me more," Janos shouted, very angry, but then he saw Master Hand approaching Janos in a threatening manner. "Wretch." Janos shouted, preparing a ball of energy, but then Master Hand. Jaws. The gigantic hand snapped its fingers, stunning Amon's air. I don't feel well, said Janos, very dizzy. But then Master Hand grabs Amon's air and starts squeezing him. Crack. Crack. Ah. Janos screamed as the giant hand applied pressure towards the demon with destructive force. While Grayfia was slowly regaining consciousness, she saw her beloved being tortured. Lucifer Sama. The silver-haired girl screamed on the ground, wounded. Until Master Hand decides to finish the fight by whipping Janos to the ground. Mash. The Grayfia's horror at seeing the most powerful demon and her fiancé being defeated in a cruel and humiliating manner. Janos fell unconscious before the gigantic enemy. Ooh. The silver-haired girl screamed upon seeing the next leader of the demonic faction being defeated. But from the demon's body a greenish energy begins to emerge from which Mio emerged, who was on her knees while crying in bitterness for the visceral decision she had made. What did I do? Mio said, very distressed seeing the results of her decision to abandon the brown-haired boy. Ignoring her surroundings, Master Hand picks up the unconscious Janos Amon, but Crazy Hand, who was picking up Razor Phoenix, arrives at her side. Both hands proceed to disappear from the underworld, which was in chaos with both demons. Grayfia, being the only one from the DXD team who still remained conscious, saw with great pain that those enormous enemies had taken her husband. Everything is lost, said Grayfia while trying to walk with her ruined dress. They took Lucifer Sama, they took him, said Grayfia crying helplessly, thinking that the best warrior of DXD had been defeated and kidnapped by the enemy of unknown origin. Everything was discouraging for the demons, but in her opinion, why did the silver-haired girl literally ignore certain people who were once the heroes of the supernatural? The appearance of the giant hands, the kidnapping of Razor and Jonas, the entity that lights up the sky even at night, it didn't bode well for the factions and the dimensions that could see Lumina, but the appearance of Kirby in the DXD dimension was synonymous with the fact that those warriors would not fight blindly without knowing what they were really facing in what could be a much worse confrontation than the one they had with the Trihexa. Chapter 2. Honey and Cherry Cafe. Faced with the unusual presence of that entity that lit up the Japanese sky at dusk, Suzaku, Lilith, Ingvild and Kunu had arrived at the cafeteria with little Kirby, who had arrived in Kyoto, where Rias, Sirzechs, Kaneko and Issei were currently working and taking refuge, all under the administration of the Phantom family, who did not hesitate to help their son's best friend, along with his girlfriends and his older brother. The four girls were surprised by what they saw in the sky, but decided to ignore it and go into the cafeteria, which was fortunately empty, to look for help. Upon entering, they found Ashen preparing hot drinks. Welcome, Ashen said from the counter. Suzaku-san. Ingvild-chan. Who are your little guests? There's no time, Ashen said the leader of the Himejima clan, somewhat worried there will be time for introductions later, so we need your help, said the raven-haired girl showing the small alien. Okay, Ashen said seriously, leaving the counter. Leave him in the guest room, I'll call Kaneko-chan to help us heal him with Senjustu and Ingvild. Lilith's favorite pastries will be ready in 2 minutes. Okay, said Ingvild as she quickly put on a reddish apron and put a scarf on her head to go into the kitchen. Come on, Lilith, I'll prepare your favorite drink. Despite the dragon's expressionless face, some stars appeared on her face because if there was one thing she liked about that place, it was being pampered with desserts and food. While with Suzaku she obeyed Ashen's instructions, being accompanied by Kunu, and went behind the counter to reach a corridor that led to the main hall, going up the main stairs, and in the first room on the right she accessed to leave Kirby on a soft bed who was still unresponsive. Seeing the state of the little pink one, she couldn't feel worse. What happened to you, little one? Suzaku said very sadly while stroking Kirby's head. 2 minutes later Kaneko appeared accompanied by Rias, Issei and Ashen. Hello, Suzaku, Issei said somewhat seriously seeing the current situation. Hello, Anata. Hello, Rias said Suzaku in a serene manner but with a touch of pink on his cheeks while he addressed Aritid kindly. Ashen informed us about our little guest, Rias said as she saw Kirby sleeping peacefully. Kaneko-chan, do your thing. Hi. Rias-sama said Kaneko as she began to emanate green senjutsu to begin healing the little pink one. I'll help you, Kaneko. Anasama said Kunu as she also began to heal Kirby. Kaneko, upon hearing her name with the honorific of older sister, wanted to throw herself at the little kitsune, but now she had to hold back her desire to reward the little kitsune and had to fulfill her mission of healing the guest. Issei for his part walked to the window of said room to see the being that was illuminating the sky. Even though it was already 8 p.m, it seemed that the day still reigned. A forced marriage. A war that left scars. And a hatred that hides something far more dangerous. Love. After the war, the magical world demands unity even. What could that be? Issei said as he saw the entity that lit up the sky. Whatever it is, it doesn't give me a good feeling, Rias said as she stood next to him. Sirzechs-san, does Rias know anything about this? Ashen said very intrigued while Suzaku joined in while they watched Lumina. Unfortunately, he doesn't know, said Rias while looking seriously at Issei. It's a very unusual phenomenon what's happening right now. Now he's communicating it with the leaders who still support us and unconditionally support Onisama. It's lucky they gave him a device to communicate with Azazel, Ajuka, Michael, Odin, Zeus and Shiva, said Issei. Despite being a demon without power, he earned the respect of the most important leaders, and especially of other mythologies, and despite his limitations, he tries to contribute his grain of sand to this rather strange situation, Suzaku said calmly. But thanks to the situation that Onisama suffered, we were able to know who our true allies are and who we can really count on, said Rias growling, remembering her former entourage and her former family, who abandoned them at the moment she needed their support the most. I never thought that Grayfia, Mio and especially the most beautiful women of the factions would plot all this for power, Issei said very stoically. In my opinion, they saw this opportunity to finish you off and go with someone who in their opinion was better. Author's note. The Phantom family knows about the supernatural thanks to Rias, Sirzechs, Kaneko, and Issei. You don't know how much I regret having behaved like a pervert, friend, said Issei, very saddened because he still hadn't completely overcome the breakup of his ex-harem. If only I had known the consequences. But then the brown-haired boy feels 3 hugs, one on his back. But despite everything, pervert or not, I love you for what you are, my Is, said Rias with a very calm smile while she planted a kiss on his cheek while she leaned her breasts on his back. He did it with his right arm. I owe you a lot, senpai. Thanks to your kindness and honesty I was able to advance as a yokai, but above all as a woman, said Kaneko, smiling in such a way that Issei's heart beat very fast. I won't be able to have the body of the stinky black cat and the fried chicken, but rest assured that I will always be by your side loving you, senpai. And by the left arm. And despite the difficulties that have come your way, you didn't give up and kept giving your best, Suzaku said, smiling, while his eyes really radiated love towards the brunette that made us fall at your feet in love with you. Heh. And not only that, the 4 of them, Issei said Issei, patting his friend on the back. Ingvild-san, Ophis-chan, Leisha-san, Seekvaira-san, Uryuka-san and Roigun-san have shown that they truly love you, friend, through the interactions they have had. That's why you're allowed to be with my handsome Miss Rias, said proud of her boyfriend, but then she sees a pink envelope in her friend's vest, so she decided to play a trick on her boyfriend's best friend. And by the way, Issei-san, will you think about reciprocating that declaration of love? She said with a mocking smile. Eh? Issei said, surprised, and by reflex, he took his hands to said garment to hide said envelope, but to his bad luck, he dropped the contents of said garment, surprising everyone. Wow, Issei, it's not just 1 envelope, there are 5 in total, said a smiling Chibi Issei, showing pastel blue, pink, yellow, red and lilac envelopes. All 5 had a heart pattern, and I know who these girls are who gave you those love letters they bit, said the brown-haired boy, running away from the room with the envelopes. Hey, give that back to me, you evil lizard. Issei shouted, chasing his friend out of the room amidst the laughter of Rias and the others who were present. At least the only thing the factions couldn't take away from Rias, Sirzechs and Issei had been their true allies, and that was what truly made them stronger. Opening. Castle of the Seraphol Leviathan, 6 a.m. Another emergency meeting was held due to the attack that the underworld had suffered at the hands of those giant hands that had not only destroyed part of the capital, but had also kidnapped the one who was going to have the title of Lucifer, the heir of the Amon clan, along with Razor Phoenix. Jonas's harem was present with bandages, slings, and healing materials, as they had received a tremendous beating from Crazy Hand. When they learned of their husband's disappearance, they couldn't bear the pain and began to cry like disgraced Magdalenes. Grayfia, for her part, seemed quite dejected and very sad, having failed the love of her life. But with Mio, the former red celestial dragon, she was a different story. Her gaze was devoid of life and light, even as she sat with her head bowed, crying, all because of the terrible decision of pride and power to push aside the bearer who saw her as a companion, a friend, but above all, someone who could love her honestly. Issei, Mio said in her mind in a very distressed manner. All this drama was seen with total annoyance and disgust. They were the main leaders of the factions, with the exception of Yasaka, Volley's team, Arthur, Biku, Fenrir and Gamagog, and Slash Dog's team, Suzaku, who could not stand the tantrums, vows of revenge, and the whining that the girls who abandoned Issei and Sirzechs, in the case of Grayfia, made so much. Jonas Konakeno shouted while her right arm was under a Velpao bandage. We need to find our husband. Zenobia demanded furiously while Griselda tried to calm her down. Please help us. Irina begged the main leaders, they were already fed up, especially one who took matters into his own hands. Will you shut up? Azazel shouted, very annoyed, hitting the stone table and expelling his aura a little to get their attention. This is a meeting of the utmost importance, not in a daycare trying to calm immature girls. Hey, what's wrong with you? Penemu shouted, wearing a neck brace and bandaged her arm. We just want to hear about our husband. Will you calm down and shut up already, Penemu? Michael said with a seriousness and a gesture that no one expected from the overlord of the sky, something that really intimidated Grigori's strongest cadre. I know that all of you care about knowing the whereabouts of your fiancée, Ajuka said very seriously, but when he mentioned the last thing he said it with a hint of disgust that everyone noticed, but now we are facing a situation that we were not prepared for, but above all, it makes me very sad to know the poor demonstration of power that you, the former entourage of the former heiress of Gremory Rias. Not to mention that the supposed new Lucifer turned out to be a walking piece of shit who did not know how to assimilate 25% of the power of the Dragon of Allah. Not to mention that in the human sky, when those hands appeared in the underworld, this entity appeared in the human world, said Michael, showing an image of Lumina through a hologram, and it is quite disturbing to me that she has such a dazzling light that can match the sun itself. All the other attendees watched with interest and a little concern about the phenomena that had struck the underworld and compromised the human world, but Jonas's wives, upon hearing how the Ma'u Beelzebub referred to them and their husband, ignoring the new enemies and the illuminating entity, could not contain their discomfort. How can you not assimilate the power of the red dragon? Grayfia said, annoyed by what Ajuka said, who had a sour face when he saw his friend's ex-wife. Mio-san said that her body was more than suitable to obtain her powers, said Sona Citri facing the leaders. And that without problems, he could reach Diabolo's dragon, and the Juggernaut drive would not affect him at all. Gabriel shouted desperately. He is the perfect carrier, damn it. Penemu shouted, very irritated, looking with wide hatred at the main leaders compared to that incompetent, good-for-nothing pervert. Faced with the tantrums of Jonas's wives, they remained silent, not because they had no arguments to contradict them, but because they would waste their breath in vain in the face of foolish women. At that, the dividing gear's wings appeared behind Volley's back. Mine. The voice of the White Empress was heard quite seriously. Do you want to tell them the truth, or do you want us to tell them, even if these undignified women refuse to believe you? At this, the former Red Empress reacted to her former rival's words. She began to feel nervous, as the White Empress knew what she was talking about. The major and minor leaders stared at Mio, who felt as if her blood had completely run cold. It's this I he said, stuttering, trying to defend himself, but the fear that the truth of the great Seekvaira and next Lucifer of this generation, but. And also, Issei Hyoudou, good for nothing. Said Volley using a tone of voice that reflected that the platinum-haired man was mocking her. I must remind you, pathetic cadre, that this good for nothing was one of those who faced the beast of the apocalypse without hesitation, something that you and those perfidious sisters of your harem did not dare to face him. Perhaps because you're cowards and lazy cards, said Volley quite seriously, but each word he said was a painful blow to his ego and pride of Ria's former entourage. Bam. The doors of the main hall of the castle slammed violently, and they saw several fallen running towards Azazel. Azazel-sama, we have an emergency, said a fallen man kneeling before him. What's going on? Said the cadre, intrigued by his subordinate's attitude. Hands appeared in the human world, said the fallen one. Where did it appear? Michael said, shocked. In Kuo, said the fallen one. That shocked the entire meeting. The enemy had already made their move. Who is protecting the city right now? Ajuka said impatiently, looking at Serafo with unfriendly eyes. There is only Saji Genshiro with Seekvaira Bail and his entourage, said the oldest of the Citri nervously. There is no time to lose, said Ajuka, let's send several soldiers to protect Kuo, Tobio, and Volley will be the first to act, we will reach the rest as soon as we gather our military forces. Okay. Said the faction leaders with the exception of Yasaka, along with Volley and Tobio who disappeared in a magic circle. We'll go to, said Zenobia trying to get up from her seat with difficulty. We must know what happened to our Jonas, Yasaka said very angry while she had her arms in a cast with a neck brace. These were a few complaints that were heard from the traders. Wait, who invited you to this? Azazel said, very irritated at the foolish women, if you can barely move, and I remind you that you couldn't against these enemies that have appeared. Azazel, who do you think you are? Stopping me from fighting, Penemu said furiously. You're superior, it's that simple, said Azazel, silencing Penemu who couldn't answer him. So you won't leave here, and you much less, Yasaka, said the cadre, pointing at the kitsune with his finger, although for what you did to Issei, supporting that damn plan to remove Sirzechs from command of the underworld, this bitch dressed as a maid, the immature Ma'u, my ex-sister who is a boar dressed as a Santa, my secretary with anger issues, and especially your disgusting bitch. I hurting your only daughter with your damn selfishness. I wish those hands would send you to Hades right now, said Azazel looking at Grayfia with hatred, but it would condemn the Yaokai faction. Leaving them without a leader is like leaving a pack without a guide, so do everyone a favor and keep the wives of the pathetic Lucifer, finished Azazel, while the leaders of the factions were leaving there to move to Kuo. Who thinks they're talking to us like that? Akeno said very furiously. If Jonas were here he would smash her face in, said Gabriel very sympathetically. Isn't that true, Mio-san? Said the Seraph without getting any response. Mio. The dragon had returned to her depressed expression. Without listening or noticing her surroundings, she could only say and think of a word, or rather at this moment, a name. Well, her eyes were already red and swollen from crying so much. Issei, she said in her mind, very distressed. Kuo. The situation in the peaceful city was already critical, as Master Hand and Crazy Hand had taken over. The moment the evil hands appeared, they began destroying the city's buildings. Houses and buildings fell under the power of the hands, which, with their fists and blows, were thrown like toys. The screams of horror from the citizens filled the air of despair. But there were two boys who were trying to keep the evil invaders at bay, but had received a pretty severe beating, who were now taking refuge in the ruins of a building, healing their wounds. Damn, said Saji with his balance breaker all cracked while taking a phoenix tear given by Seekvaira. These things are very hard to take down. Concentrate, Saji. Seekvaira said with his Regulus Nemia armor in better condition than the blonde's armor. I know you're still hurt by what those damn things did to you, but now we must focus on defeating those who broke into the underworld. But Saji, knowing what the heir of the Bale clan was referring to, about the wedding of that girl who rejected his feelings in a cruel and cold way, did not hesitate to make a bitter gesture, interrupting him. Who the hell is interested in that? Said Saji, very angry for me. But those who reside and attended that event that sniff that Saji tried to reproach, but he couldn't do it anymore, since it hurt him to have seen his ex-love wearing a wedding dress that she showed off and boasted about a few days before marrying the heir of Amon in front of her entire entourage, that ended up breaking his heart. Seekvaira, seeing such a miserable scene on Saji's part, only thought of the first thing to make him react. Ham. Seekvaira had hit him hard enough to make him react. Saji was shocked after receiving the blow. Saji, do you think I don't feel bad seeing a great friend in this state? Said the heir of Bale looking at the blonde. Do you think I feel disappointed by my cousin's former entourage for being ungrateful to Issei, Rias, and especially with the efforts that Sirzechs made for them to improve and all that they paid for with exile? Do you think I feel bad that that woman, if I can call her that, Sona Citri, who turned out to be a damn interested and convenient but over the strongest women of the factions, who had to be the ones to advocate for our friends, succumbed to power and selfishness? Saji looked at the heir of the Bale clan with stupefaction. Saji, you are not the only one who suffered from this baseness plotted by Grayfia and the former Red Empress that seriously affected the alliance, but that has not stopped me from doing the right thing. There is a saying that the rarest and most beautiful flower is not the one that shows off its most colorful and gives off the most intoxicating aroma, it is the one that, despite the rains and any phenomenon that could have affected it negatively, remained standing, said Seekvaira while putting his hand on the blonde's shoulder. If Sona decided to leave with a fool, thinking that by marrying him, she would fulfill and strengthen her goal of the raiding game school, while she not only knew how to appreciate your feelings, but also trampled on them, I'm sorry, she is a stupid reverend along with her entourage who blindly follow her, along with the girls who turned their backs on Issei. Hyoudou, move on, Saji. Please don't let this kill you inside. The blonde began to feel that the strength that had left him when Sona announced her engagement to Jonas Amon was returning to his body. He sat up and a smile appeared on Saji's face. Thank you, Seekvaira, Saji said happily, to which the heir of Bale nods in response to his gratitude. We're waiting to defeat those monsters. Seekvaira said. Both warriors of the supernatural ran towards where Crazy and Master were wreaking havoc. But inside Saji. Thank you, heir of Bale, for making my bear react, said Viridian, Vitrafem, Saji, if I were free I would comfort you in these moments and give you all my love, said the dragon in a dreamy and serene way. Moments before the invasion of Crazy and Master Hand. Kuo City. Honey and Cherry Cafe. It was Sunday morning and our protagonists were free from schoolwork but not from work at the Phantom family cafeteria. It was a busy morning for the staff. As the delicious aroma of freshly brewed coffee and blueberry bread filled the air, Rias, Kaneko, Ingvald and Suzaku could be seen kindly serving customers who were ordering things. Also, the new mini-maids, Lilith and Kunu, were helping to serve the hungry customers. While Lumina had disappeared from the sky, she apparently only appeared when night fell, and in the guest bedroom, Kirby was still sleeping peacefully. Everything was back to normal when Ishen's mother, Layla, ran into the cafeteria. The customers saw her panting from exertion. Lady Phantom, said Rias, very surprised. Eyes, turn on the news channel, Layla said, very upset, pointing at the television. Obeying, Kaneko takes control and switches on the channel, sending everyone a terrible news. Breaking news. The city of Kuo is under attack by hand-shaped beings. They have destroyed homes and buildings, destroyed streets and avenues, and cannot be stopped by the Japanese military. There are many wounded, and the situation is quite discouraging and chaotic. Everyone in the cafeteria watched on the screen as the neighboring city became a complete disaster zone. They all watched as Crazy and Master Hand destroyed the city where Issei, Rias, Kaneko, and Sirzechs had once shared wonderful moments, but which were all ruined by Grayfia, Mio, and the supernatural beings who turned their backs on them. But suddenly, Rias remembered something. Oni-sama is there. shouted the Retid covering her mouth. He went with Issei Nayasama to Kuo on an errand, Kaneko said in surprise. Issei's mother fell to her knees upon hearing the white Nekomata's words. Oh no, my son, he's in danger. Layla said in terror. Everyone heard that Issei and Sirzechs were in the disaster zone, they didn't hesitate to show their concern. Ingvild and Kunu sat Layla down on one of the cafeteria chairs to calm her down a bit, while Suzaku brought some tea to calm her down. Don't worry, Layla-san, said Rias looking at the black-haired boy's mother, we will bring Issei back safe and sound, she said in a low voice, so that no one would know that they would use the magic circle transportation. Please Rias-san, I beg you, Layla said very distressed, taking the Retid's hand, it's the only thing I have left, I won't bear the loss of her as I did with her father. Don't worry, said Kaneko confidently, Issei Nayasama will be with us before nightfall. Although I really hate the idea, we must go to Kuo immediately, said Issei, dedicated to helping his friend and brother-in-law Ingvild, Suzaku, Kunu and Lilith. Protect the clientele please, if those hands come to the city, you are the only line of defense. Hi, said the aforementioned. Rias, Kaneko and Issei proceeded to leave the cafeteria, and in a vacant lot, they proceeded to leave in a magic circle, without knowing in the phantom residence, the pink-colored guest had left his room where he was resting. Kuo City. On the avenues, civilians fled from the giant invading hands, which continued their destructive path. While some of the police and army helped evacuate the civilians, others attempted to neutralize them with their weapons, but it was useless against Crazy and Master Hand, who easily defeated the forces of law and order and the defense of humanity. But at Kuo University, one of the few places that had not been attacked by enemies of colossal size, Sirzechs and Issei were sheltered in the auditorium of said academy, along with some students who were hiding from the disaster that was Kuo City. It seems like this is going to take a long time, Issei said as he looked out one of the windows at an apparent peace outside. But they can appear at any moment, said Sirzechs very seriously. How I would like to have my powers and face those hands. Caution above all, Sirzechs, Issei said calmly. Now the important thing is to find a solution to get us to Sinkyaro safe and sound. Then Issei's cell phone rings and he answers it. Issei, you are fine, said a voice he recognized. Issei, it can't be worse, with those things flying and destroying the city, Issei said. When he mentioned that name, he caught the attention of three girls. Where are they? Said Issei's voice. Issei, we meet at Kuo University, Issei said with some annoyance. Issei, you and Onasama don't move from there, we'll be with you in 5 minutes, Ria's voice said now. Please don't take long, said the black-haired man with a green streak, but then he felt someone tugging at his sleeve and saw that three girls were calling his attention. Can I help you with something? Do you know Issei Hyoudou? Said a girl wearing glasses and brown hair. Yes, I know him, he's my childhood friend. Who are you? Issei said, looking at the three girls. I'm Isekai'ed, said the girl adjusting her glasses, wanting to look cool in front of Issei, but. A former pervert, Issei finished, making the brunette go blank. And how do I know? Issei and Rias told me many things about you and especially your famous ability to measure the. Don't say it again please. Ika shouted, very embarrassed. Create a reputation and go to sleep, said a second brown-haired girl, although it was very noticeable when you applied your ability to measure that to Hyoudou, and you murmured, Rias-san is very lucky, sorry for not introducing myself, my name is Kaori Murayama. Kill me? Ika said with great shame while her spirit came out of her mouth. Okay. Sirzechs said, now seeing Isekai'ed and Issei all red with a drop of sweat falling from his head. Excuse my bad manners, my name is Yuikadis. Ika-san has been changing since Hyoudou left the city, said a pink-haired girl, while the brunette with glasses made a bitter face because she learned the hard way from Asia that Issei was kicked out of his old residence. And when she found out, Ika-san searched everywhere in the city to give him shelter and protection, said Murayama, but she never heard from him again in a month, and we also found out that Rias, Onasama and Kaneko-chan also left Kuo at the same time as Hyoudou. It's a bit of a long story to tell, Sirzechs said a little uncomfortably, but if you're looking for Issei, I know where he is. Seriously? Said Ika, grabbing Sirzechs' dress shirt. Please tell me, I want to know about Issei. Begged the brunette with glasses. He lives in the adjacent city of Sinkyaro, said Issei without stopping smiling, and to be exact, Issei, Rias and Kaneko-chan are guests in my house. When this situation is resolved, you are welcome, said Sirzechs, passing them a card from the cafeteria, where the ex-Mau works. By the way, I did not introduce myself, I am Sirzechs, Ria's older brother. You are the brother of Murayama, said, shocked by Sirzechs' appearance when. Good. The Kuo University auditorium began to shake. What's going on? Said a student. Good. The walls of the auditorium began to move from side to side, similar to an earthquake. Good. The students covered their heads with a look of fear. Issei slowly approached the window to see what he least wanted. They're here, he said with a look of terror. Everyone knew what the foreign boy meant when he. Craik. The auditorium roof was starting to separate like a dollhouse. They were terrified. No, that was very small compared to what the students felt when they saw the invaders right in front of their noses. Ahahahaha. Nuo. Shouted everyone present with the exception of Issei and Sirzechs as they saw the colossal hand. Everyone run. Sirzechs shouted, opening the auditorium door with Issei so the civilians could escape from there. Fearing that they would fall prey to enemies of colossal size, they ran, regardless of their surroundings, to survive. Everything was going well when. Hiya. Sirzechs and Issei see where that scream was from when they see. Yui-chan. Ika and Murayama shouted when they saw that their pink-haired friend had fallen. Help, I sprained my ankle, said Caddis holding said part of her leg, seeing that it was indeed swelling. The black-haired man without hesitation runs to her aid. But then one of the hands focuses on the black-haired man and the pink-haired woman. Oh no, careful. Murayama shouted when he saw the crazy hand was going to crush Issei and Caddis. The black-haired boy watching in horror as the giant hand was going to crush them only occurs to cover the pink-haired girl with his body while she clung to the black-haired boy. Both expected the worst before the helpless looks of Sirzechs, Ika and Murayama, seeing the possible end of both boys when. 5. The giant hand shot out to the side and then they saw a corpulent silhouette with armor shining in gold and another with armor as dark as the night itself. Both had connected a blow towards crazy hand, managing to knock it down. Issei and Caddis look in disbelief at the guys who saved them from certain death. Get out of here. Exclaimed the silhouette. Sirzechs recognized the warrior who saved the life of his friend and the girl he just met. Sereerg. Saji sent Sirzechs shouted, impressed. Get out of here Mau-sama. Shouted the blonde as he watched crazy hand rise again, we won't be able to hold him down for long. You hear, let's get out of here. Ordered the Redeed, very powerless at not being able to help fight those who, despite having lost their powers, still recognized him as the Tromau Lucifer. The Redeed was accompanied by Ika and Murayama escorted the older Redeed while Issei proceeds to make a small temporary bandage on his ankle with a silk scarf. Resist. Said Issei carrying the pink-haired girl like a princess. Hold on even if you don't want to, said the black-haired girl starting to run since he knew from Issei that the kendo duo had that character. Caddis was going to complain, but due to the circumstances, he agreed. They left the auditorium building amidst the sounds of destruction and impact in the auditorium, where the laughter of hands and the screams of Sereerg and Saji could be heard. Nai-sama. Shouted a voice to which Sirzechs and Issei recognized and in the distance they saw Rias, Kaneko and Issei running towards them. It's good to see you again, but we can't be here for long, Issei said seriously, while looking everywhere. Remember that neither Rias nor Kaneko-chan nor I can be in this city by order of that bastard. We have everything to go now, said Rias preparing a magic circle, but she didn't notice that Murayama, Caddis and Ika were present, who looked impressed. You. Said the nervous Redeed. Gremory senpai Murayama and Caddis said impressed to see what the Redeed was going to do. She started cursing herself because of the rush to get out of there quickly. But a brunette with glasses was looking at the one she had been desperately searching for a month, her eyes starting to turn crystalline as she saw the brunette who had stolen her heart a long time ago. Issei Ika said upon seeing the former pervert. Seeing the eyes that threatened to shed tears, his mind went blank as he didn't know what to say to his former classmate. I was going to open my mouth but. Room. Everyone saw how the auditorium was collapsing and from it, 2 columns of smoke came out that were expelled from there until they hit the floor revealing. Ah! Were the screams that came out of Sereerg and Saji's mouths when they violently hit the ground. Issei seeing 2 of his greatest friends and rivals bite the dust because of their colossal enemies. Ahahahaha. The laughter of both hands could be heard as if they were rejoicing in all the destruction they had committed. They headed towards our protagonists in an imposing manner. They wanted to escape from there, but fear had taken over their legs. In the case of Rias, Ika, and the former kendo captains. Saji, get up. Issei said desperately while dragging a badly injured blonde. Let's go Sereerg. Sirzechs shouted, lifting up a heavy and semi-conscious Sereerg whose armor was shattering into pieces. Desperation ran faster through the veins and nerves of our protagonists, who saw how the enemies were approaching very dangerously, crazy, and Master Hand opened their hands with the intention of taking a defeated Saji and Sereerg so that they would share the uncertain fate that Jonas Amon and Razor Phoenix now suffer. Issei, seeing that crazy hand was about to take Saji, decides to cover him with his body in a protective manner, while Master Hand proceeds to capture Sereerg. Sirzechs proceeds to uselessly accelerate the pace to take him away from here, but Isekai'ed and Mau were watching how the gigantic hands were a few meters away from kidnapping their friends. They could only curse themselves for not being able to do anything. It's our end. Sirzechs and Issei said in their minds, closing their eyes, hoping to be captured helplessly under the horrified gaze of the girls who watched them to die in such a pathetic way without doing anything. Nothing. A shock wave was felt in the combat zone where they saw light trails falling from the sky, but the surprising thing was that these light trails had impacted both hands, but the most surprising thing was that. Ah! Both hands screamed in pain as they were knocked down. Crazy Hand fell on the athletics fields, while Master Hand fell on the ruins of the auditorium. Issei, Ashen and the others watched in shock as those trails of light knocked down the giant hands without difficulty. They hadn't screamed in pain even when Seekvaira attacked them with his enormous strength or Saji who had attacked them with his dark fire. But the trails of light slowly approached our protagonists and stood in front of a stupefied Rias, Issei, Kaneko, Ashen and Sirzechs, with the +2 of those trails stood in front of Seekvaira and Saji, who were struggling not to fall into unconsciousness. The stelae were gradually taking a circular shape until they manifested a form that surprised everyone. At that point, the spheres with a multicolored logo take the aforementioned people by surprise and begin to merge with them. Ugh! Rias, Kaneko, Issei and Ashen screamed as they felt the spheres merging with their bodies. Sirzechs endured the pain as he felt the sphere entering his body, while Seekvaira and Saji barely felt the pain as they arched their bodies when the spheres fused with them, but an extra effect happened to the demons. The evil pieces of Rias, Kaneko, Issei, Sirzechs, Seekvaira and Saji were expelled from their bodies. They were stunned, especially Rias and Sirzechs who gasped and saw with total amazement that Rei's evil piece was on the floor. Murayama, Caddis and Kiryu saw this perplexed, although the former pervert Kiryu knew of the existence of the supernatural, she still did not get used to seeing these magical phenomena or events. What happened? Rias said panting, putting her left hand between her breasts, since it was the area where the sphere entered Rias, while she picked up her evil piece from the ground. I feel weird, Ashen said as he touched his chest where the sphere entered. Is everyone okay? Sirzechs said panting. Just a little surprised, said Issei in the same way, but I feel like my energy has increased. Curious, said Kaneko taking her belly where the sphere entered her body. I also feel the same. Ugh, Seekvaira complained, holding his face as if he was recovering from a terrible hangover. What would happen? Said a voice as they saw that Saji was beginning to stand up and beside him were Sona Citri's 4 pawn pieces and also a black sphere that was shining. Saji! Saji! Shouted an excited voice that the now ex-peon of Citri recognized. Iveridian! Said Saji as he picked up the sphere, completely ignoring the pawn pieces. Everyone was stunned by what they saw. Those spheres made Saji's sacred gear eject. Room. A small tremor occurred and they saw that Crazy and Master Hand had gotten back up. Everyone was alarmed because the giant hands were now moving in a more hostile manner, indicating that they were now enraged. But in that. Don't worry, said a voice that came from Issei. Who is it? Issei said, turning around. Everyone was stunned by the brunette's strange behavior. What's wrong, Issei? Rias said, somewhat curious. We are going to help you defeat Crazy and Master Hand, said a female voice that now came from Rias, who also imitated Issei's behavior, looking everywhere. And we have selected them not only to defeat them, said another female voice that came from Kaneko, who was surprised. But also to defend his world and his universe, said another voice coming from Saji. Everyone was very confused, but everyone noticed that those who had contact with these spheres began to emanate a very luminous aura. And for that, said a voice coming from Sirzechs. We have selected them to be the bearers of our powers and our knowledge in battle, said a voice now coming from Ashen. And it's time for you to fight for your world and your dimension now, said a voice coming from Sirzechs. And immediately a magic circle appeared beneath our protagonists, their bodies began to glow, they felt a warmth that was synonymous with tranquility, but at the same time they felt their strength begin to increase, they felt that what was happening to them, what they felt could help them against the gigantic enemies. Shiem. The glow appeared where our protagonists were, blinding Ika, Murayama and Kiryu for a moment. A wave of heat that was pleasant for their bodies covered them for a moment, but when the luminous phenomenon subsided, they saw that Crazy and Master Hand were incredibly retreating. The former kendo captains and the former pervert saw where their friends were, but their mouths were open when they saw them. Bad audio. Issei. Ika said, seeing where her beloved chestnut tree was. The aforementioned only sees her body and sees her new appearance, while in his hand, he carried a very beautiful and intimidating looking sword. Issei, what happened to you? Said Ria's voice, and when he saw his girlfriend, he couldn't contain his surprise at seeing Ria's new appearance. Rias, you look more beautiful, said Issei, blushing at the appearance of Rias, who had a lightning-shaped sword in her hands, while one of her hands held a grimoire. What happened to me? Said Ashen's voice, and everyone saw the new appearance he had adopted, but the most outstanding thing was the sword he carried, a golden color, but above all the edge of the blade is a reddish color, and above all, it has sharp rotating edges similar to a chainsaw, and a two-colored aura similar to fire, yellow and reddish. I feel taller, more robust and stronger, but my arms feel strange, said Kaneko's voice, revealing her appearance that left Issei blushing. I don't know what happened, but I feel capable of facing our enemies, said Saji, showing his new appearance. "It's time for our revenge," said Serek's voice, who also revealed his new appearance by cracking his knuckles. "And above all defend the city," said Sirzechs' voice revealing his appearance. "We will not allow those damned hands to continue causing destruction," said the ex-Gremory, who immediately unsheathed a sword. Everyone nodded, and immediately our protagonists took a battle stance, which they naturally, or rather unconsciously, took because they realized it wasn't the usual stance they took before starting a fight. "Hey, what is that coming down from the sky?" Murayama said, pointing at something that was beginning to descend from the sky until it landed with a bang, rolling like a ball. Rias and Issei discovered who it was. "Kuoh!" Kirby shouted, siding with Issei, looking at the hands that had become static. The battle in Kuo was approaching, and it was time for the exiles of the supernatural to show what they were capable of and above all, to defend the human world that gave them shelter and protection when they needed it most. Chapter 3. Kuo University. A scenario that was believed to be catastrophic in the face of crazy and Master Hand's invasion. The human civilians who were sheltering in buildings untouched by the evil hands were paying attention to what was happening, but upon seeing that certain people had undergone a transformation, something inside them said it could be a small ray of hope against the invaders who were destroying the city. There was no shortage of news helicopters that began to surround the area where the new challengers would now face the gigantic villains. "We are live in the city of Kuo. We are above the area where those giant hands have stopped their destruction by feeling those people transform and getting strange outfits, but especially that adorable little pink thing," said the reporter, while the camera focused on our heroes who were slowly approaching, but then they see that they take their combat positions. Those people, are they willing to face those hands? Are they crazy? Obviously, this live broadcast was national and practically international news, as all of Japan and, in part, almost all of the United States, Mexico, Ukraine, China, Spain, Great Britain, South Korea, and France were watching. But it was also news in the supernatural world. In Kuo City. Cafeteria Honey and Cherry. The diners at the Phantom Matriarch's cafeteria were amazed at those people they knew well, the two very beautiful maids Rias and Kaneko, Layla Phantom's son who was in charge of the drinks at the cafeteria, and the now star pastry chef and cook, arrived so quickly to the neighboring city when it normally took 2 hours by car, but that fact went to hell when they saw that those people that the small city loved very much transformed, and the reporter mentioned the possible confrontation. Many were scared to see the madness they would do. Ingvald, Suzaku, Kunu and Lilith were alarmed to see their friends about to start such a confrontation. "Issei-kun," said Suzaku, very worried. "Kaneko-chan." "Rias, you're right," said Kunu and Lilith. "Sirzechs-san. Ashen-san, aren't those Saji-kun and Serekg-san over there?" said Ingvald, looking closely at the screen. The Ophis remained expressionless inside, but inside she was really worried about her true friends, especially that brown-haired boy she considered hers. "I think I'm going to faint," Layla Phantom said weakly as she saw that her son was going to face Crazy Hand and Master Hand. Suzaku and Ingvald were going to help Mrs. Phantom when. Crash. The sound of breaking porcelain was heard in the cafeteria, drawing everyone's attention and reviving the Phantom Matriarch. They saw a pink-haired girl on the floor with a scared expression, seeing the mess she had made, but also what she saw on television. I'm sorry," said the pink-haired maid very fearfully. "Felicia, are you okay?" Suzaku said, worried about her coworker. "You should be more careful, this is the 5th tea set you've destroyed in a week, Felicia," Suzaku said when he saw that the pink-haired girl couldn't stop looking at the screen where she was causing the confrontation. Her gaze, which reflected concern, focused on a black-haired man with green hair. "Felicia, don't worry, Ashen will be fine as long as Rias and the others are with him." "Huh?" Suzaku-san said the pink-haired maid nervously, waving her hands. No, it's it." She tried to excuse herself, but the words wouldn't come out of her mouth, and the atomic blush on her face betrayed the hidden feelings for the son of her current employer. "Ifufu, don't worry Felicia, when you're ready confess your feelings for Ashen-san," said Suzaku, smiling. "You already have ample competition for her affection." "Ah, hi," Felicia said, very red while her head expelled steam while she looked at the floor. All this dialogue was seen by the cafeteria, which lightened the tension a little and brought out a few laughs, especially from Layla Phantom, who had a great affection for her clumsy worker. She was able to calm down a little but had something on her mind. "That China set will be deducted from your pay, Felicia-chan," he said in his mind, while he continued smiling calmly. Opening. Kuo City. Kuo University. Our friends were ready for any maneuver their gigantic enemies could perform until suddenly the hands began to shine suspiciously when. Brom. The city began to shake, and everyone saw that the ruins of the university were shaking. "What's going on?" Serekg, Terry Bogard, said. All our protagonists saw that the ground of Kuo University was beginning to separate, and also the area of the ruins where our protagonists were, and the colossal hands began to rise little by little to the sky. Saji sees that his 3 former classmates from the academy were in the area that was rising. "Quick, get out of here," shouted Saji. Simon Belmont, take care of her please. Shouted Saji, throwing towards Murayama the sphere where Viridian's soul resided. The three humans nodded at what Saji said and quickly left the area that was rising. The ruins continued to rise to a height that practically the entire city could see. Many Japanese television helicopters were surrounding the area that had risen. It wasn't more than 10 minutes before Crazy and Master Hand stopped glowing, and at the same time, the area that had risen into the sky became static. This is unheard of, shouted a reporter. The hands that are causing chaos in Kuo only saw these young people who transformed in a strange way and into a tiny and adorable pink being, and they raised part of the destroyed Kuo University into a kind of combat zone. Everyone in Kuo, or rather everyone in Japan, had their eyes glued to the television. In the supernatural, they were also witnesses of the strange event in Kuo, to be exact, in the former Sirzechs castle where the traders were watching the event. They couldn't contain their disgust for their former mistress, their ex-fiancé, their former harem partner, and obviously, their former faction leader. "Hey, what a ridiculous outfit," Rias has said Akeno very mockingly, seeing the Retide's transformation. "Don't even mention that pervert," Arena said, mentioning Issei. "Even Kiba has more style than him." "Shirin looks like a bum like that," said Kuroka, making a gesture that reflected mockery towards her little sister. "PFFF. What rags Saji is wearing," said Sona, laughing at her pawn. "She still doesn't know that her pieces were expelled. He looks like an ugly carnival king." "Although everyone looks horrible in those clothes, the only one who is saved is that little pink thing," said Seraphil, pointing at Kirby. "He will be an excellent character for my magical girl show." Levi Tan, said the Mahu with a neck brace and her head bandaged, reflecting her desire to kidnap little Kirby. Grayfia, seeing her ex-husband, if it already disgusted her to see him, now with his transformation, it aggravated her repudiation of him even more. "This is serious, and you dare to dress up as a vile jester, Sirzechs?" Grayfia said, very annoyed. "You are really pathetic." While the traders continued to rant at our protagonists. Change of scene. The platform where our heroes and Kirby were standing had already ascended to a height where the entire city could see them. Crazy and Master were frozen in midair. "It only took us transforming for them to do this," said Ashen Korn. "It's like those hands know it's us," said Rias, Robin Fem. "But they have stopped attacking," said Kaneko, Min, looking at her enemies. "What are those things up to?" said Sirzechs. Those on the platform did not move, the hands still remained in the sky, none moved under a heavy tension while the wind blew strong, but then someone walked facing the colossal hands. "Poyo Poyo," Kirby shouted, pointing at his hands as he looked at Issei and the others who had transformed. For some strange reason, they managed to understand what the small pink alien was saying. At that, the contenders nodded among themselves and looked at the small chubby being, also nodding in agreement with what he was saying. Kirby smiled determinedly and looked at his gigantic enemies. "Very well, we will split into two," said Sirzechs. "Those of us who carry a sword, which are me, Rias Tan, Ashen San and Issei-kun, we will take care of the left hand, Master Hand." "Okay," Sirzechs said, unconsciously adjusting his cap in the style of Terry Bogard. "Then Kaneko-san, Saji, me and this little friend will take care of the other hand, Crazy Hand." "Poyo," Kirby shouted in agreement. "Well, what are we waiting for?" Issei shouted. Audio plays. At the event, the two groups of fighters went out to attack each other's hands, and these also came out to clash. Confrontation 1. Sirzechs, Ashen, Issei Rias vs Master Hand. The three of the four swordsmen went head-on before Master Hand. "Wow, did he have this speed?" Sirzechs said in his mind as he saw and felt that characteristic in his mind. At that, Roy, Sirzechs, taking advantage of that speed, jumped towards Master Hand and attacked with an aerial slash, causing colossal damage to the hand that suffered very little. "Incredible," Sirzechs said mentally. Master Hand rose above Sirzechs, deciding to crush him with the palm of his hand. "Shit," Sirzechs shouted as he ran away from there. 5. The colossal hand fell to the floor, failing to crush Sirzechs. "How dare you try to hurt my brother?" Rias screamed. The Redede unconsciously changed her Grimoire to a red one and screamed. "Will fire," he shouted, casting a fire spell towards the hand. BOOMMM. Master Hand resented many micro-explosions due to Ria's attack. He is surprised because he had never done a fire attack in his life. But seeing the gigantic enemy collapsed, two swordsmen took advantage of their enemy on the ground. "Now Shen," Issei shouted. "Your order," he shouted as they ran out to attack. Issei jumps over the colossal hand that was barely recovering from Ria's magical attack to be on the opposite side so that both swordsmen could begin to use combos. Issei began the attack by throwing slashes towards the hand that could not defend itself at the moment. "This sword is more practical and more effective than Ascalon," Issei said mentally, while launching another downward diagonal slash towards Master Hand, who resented it quite a bit as he moved and arched in pain. Ashen, for his part, only needed 2 diagonal slashes of his sword when he stuck his weapon in, and his head began a metamorphosis in which his head transformed for a moment into that of a dragon. Issei shouted upon seeing the transformation of his best friend, but the next step had left his combat allies even more surprised because his arms were undergoing a transformation when they joined together, when they saw that they had transformed into a lethal claw jaw of the same creature that Issei had exclaimed and immediately. Planche. X15. The sound of jaws closing under a vicious attack on the colossal hand, Ashen ended up launching a strong bite towards Master Hand, who had to turn to get out of the attack zone to start floating again. Incredible was all the now bearer of Corrin's soul could say as his arms and head returned to normal. But Master Hand would take the offensive again, and just like in the underworld he launched himself like a missile towards the fighters to hit them in a bestial onslaught. Careful. Sirzechs shouted, stepping aside. Issei and Ashen managed to dodge the attack of the colossal hand, but… 5. Hiya. Rias screamed because she couldn't dodge it in time and received Master Hand's attack in full, which horrified everyone when they saw that she had been thrown off the platform. Rias. Sirzechs, Issei and Ashen shouted, seeing that their sister girlfriend friend was thrown out of set. Outside the combat platform. The news was broadcasting the fight live when they saw that Rias had been brutally attacked and thrown off the cliff. This is horrible, the miss is going to fall. The reporter in the helicopter screamed in horror. In Kuo, seeing Ria's silhouette in the air, some girls screamed in horror, others closed their eyes as a sign that they did not want to see death. Ria's senpai. Murayama, Kadis and Kiryu. Among the crowd were hidden like normal people the leaders who support Sirzechs, and seeing Rias fall, they could not show their concern. Damn, we can't enter the combat zone, said Azazel angrily. There's a mysterious magic barrier preventing us from getting there, said Michael. This Gremory, said Auden with regret seeing Ria's imminent end. In the underworld. The traders who watched the battle were surprised by the skills shown by Issei, Ashen and Sirzechs. They could not believe that they could hurt the hands that had humiliated them on their wedding day. This is impossible, Penemu shouted when she saw that Issei managed to make Master Hand arch in pain. Some nobody managed to hurt them. Said Tiamat incredulously upon seeing that Ashen with his transformation managed to make Master Hand retreat. This is humiliating, Arena shouted with hatred and anger. We, the wives of the great Lucifer, must be the ones to put those monsters against the ropes, not those bastards, said Asia very furiously, gritting her teeth when she saw that her ex-mistress, her ex-fiancé, her ex-leader and the friend of these three were managing to fight their enemies who had humiliated them. But when Master Hand's attack on Rias occurred, some traders remained indifferent to the Redeed's misfortune, some even showed an evil smile at that. The theater is over so soon. Akeno said mockingly. Finally, the leader of that good-for-nothing pervert's harem is going to die, Yusaka said with a very rude laugh. That gesture spread to Jainozamon's other wives. Grayfia watched as the one she considered her younger sister fell off the cliff. A sense of satisfaction began to fill her rotten heart. You wouldn't be in this predicament if you had agreed to marry our man. I hope that in the afterlife, you'll be smarter and know who to be with for all eternity, Grayfia said, smiling maliciously. Back to the combat zone. Rias was falling from the platform resenting said attack. Damn, this hurt, she said very resentfully while she felt her body going into free fall. No, I can't get my wings out, I think this is the end for me. Rias, don't give up. The same voice shouted from inside her, use my magic to save your life. But how, said Rias while her body was increasing its speed in free fall. Change your tone. Shouted the same female voice, you can use my wind, thunder, fire and dark magic. Don't waste time. The Redeed regained her posture in midair and, heeding the voice, changed the grip of her hand. Wind magic, the Redeed said mentally, and immediately her red tone changed to a green one. I did it, it's time to return to the fight, Elwind, Rias shouted, and immediately, the Redeed launched wind magic from her hand towards the precipice, propelling it into the air and reaching the edge of the platform almost, Rias said, grabbing onto the platform. Rias. Issei shouted, running towards her to pick her up, are you okay? Better than ever, my Is, the Redeed said flirtatiously, now I know more or less what you faced every day, and that motivates me more to continue supporting you. Hey lovebirds, we still have a loose hand to neutralize. Ashen shouted while Sirzechs slashed at the hand that was resenting the Redeed's attacks. Let's go. Shouted Rias and Issei joining the attack. Outside the dome. She has been saved, she has nearly been saved. The reporter screamed like a real madwoman when she saw Rias' strategy. Everyone watching the fight on television and the people in Kuo breathed a sigh of relief. While in Sirzechs' former castle, the traders groaned in frustration at what their former friend had done to save her life. Those scavenger women were truly seeking the misfortune of the Redeed who had once been their friend and her loved ones. While with the leaders mixed in the crowd. Father, I almost had an aneurysm because of you, said Michael, wearing a white suit and his hair tied back in a ponytail, sighing in relief. Are you worried, brother? Azazel said without changing his clothes, equally calm and smiling, remember who we are dealing with. Exactly, said Volley very calmly. We are talking about Issei Hyoudou, the one who despite no longer being the Seekvaira, always looks for a way to become strong for the people he loves so much. And let's not forget Rias and Sirzechs, said Auden, wearing a flowery shirt and shorts, very much like Master Roshi, who despite being banished from the underworld by a stupid whim of their parents and that bastard Grayfia, uphold the legacy of their grandmother Chisis and their ancestor Rias. I wish Milikas could see how her father and aunt fight despite adversity, said Tobio. Don't doubt it, said Azazel, smiling secretly. I gave him a device through which he could see his father, while the miserable Lucifer and his grandparents keep him captive in the Gremory castle. While at Gremory castle, under the ignorance of her grandparents and her own mother, thinking that the youngest member of the Gremory clan was studying and training as an elite and high-class demon, Milikas hid under books to watch the fight of her father, her aunt, her hero and her friend. Of these three, Haman Otu-san, Rias Onasama, Asani Naisama, Ashen-san, he said in a low voice, very excited to see how his dad was fighting fiercely against the enemy that had humiliated Grayfia and her harem sisters. Show that you are strong. The little Redeed, since he was separated from his father by orders of Janos and his harem, stopped seeing his grandparents and especially his mother as family. Before any order from Grayfia or her harem sisters, he only applied the law of ice and locked himself in the castle library or in his room, avoiding contact with those mentioned. The only one he cared about was his great-grandmother Chisis, who provided him with food and the attention he needed. Back to the combat zone. Audio plays. The four swordsmen threw themselves at the gigantic hand, which could barely retreat, but in an act of desperation, Master Hand rose up in haste and tried again to crush his enemies. This time he went against Ashen. 5. Just a close call, Ashen said, having narrowly escaped being crushed. But seeing that attack, the Redeed came up with a somewhat risky maneuver. Issei, Ashen Anisama, shouted Rias while changing the color of her grimoire to a yellow one. Call the attention of the hand. I need you to be the perfect bait, shouted Rias while she began to accumulate energy in her grimoire that began to shine. Are you crazy? Ashen shouted as he threw another diagonal slash at Master Hand. If you want to get even for the camel picture joke I put on your extra large pudding that scared you and you left at midnight, I ate it. That's a pretty exaggerated way for me to pay you back. So you were there. Rias screamed hysterically as her tone shone brighter. You know that I have an immense terror of those beasts, that I can't even see them in a painting, and you even think of putting a picture of one on my extra large limited edition pudding. I swear that as soon as we get to the cafeteria you will end up in the dog on the floor yoga position and you will think more than twice about showing me the picture of a camel before my eyes. Hey, concentrate, shouted Issei, brandishing his sword, repelling Master Hand's attack. Then you kick his tailbone, Rias. Sirzechs shouted, but now we have a much bigger problem, the older Redeed shouted, avoiding another attack. The RRRR. Rias could only grunt at the discovery, while Ashen could only put on a nervous smile. Not to mention that they were being recorded live, their comical dialogue was heard all over Japan, leaving the entire country of Nippon with a drop of sweat falling from their necks. So bait strategy, Sirzechs said. Very well, if there is nothing better to do. Issei and Ashen nodded at what the Redeed said, and that's it. Rias kept her distance, still charging energy in her yellow grimoire, while her other companions gathered to tempt Master Hand into crushing them. Let's go, shitty Hand, Issei shouted, provoking said Hand. Are you afraid of us, wanker Hand? Ashen shouted. It has a certain similarity to the hand of a certain crazy wanker who rents girlfriends. Sirzechs shouted something that made them laugh outrageously, including Rias, since she knew what her brother was referring to. Master Hand, faced with the mockery he received from his tiny opponents, decided to rise above the three and, understanding their hands, decided to crush the three opponents. The three friends watched their enemies maneuver seriously. Hold on a little. Rias shouted as she finished accumulating energy, but… Boo. The giant hand descended in freefall to crush the male swordsman just inches from impact when… Now attack. Rias shouted. Issei jumped out at the impact and connected with the tip of his sword. It's working, Issei shouted as he tried to pierce the palm of his hand with Master Hand, stopping his advance, but Master Hand began to resume his crushing attack. Clash. The second to act was Sirzechs as his sword was covered in fire and he launched an aerial attack, again pushing back Master Hand, but the gigantic enemy was once again taking advantage. It's not enough. Sirzechs shouted, starting to get tired while Master Hand started to gain ground. Swish. Ashen, for his part, transformed his head into a dragon again, but now he had taken his wings from the same creature and went out to attack his gigantic enemy, propelling himself with his hydrokinesis and hitting Master Hand with his antlers and wings, who retreated a few meters due to the damage caused by Ashen. The three swordsmen continued to inflict damage on Master Hand, who despite everything tried to crush them like insects, but little by little, Master Hand gained ground on everything. His energies were being decimated. Rias was staring, waiting for the right moment to launch her attack. Everyone watching the battle had their hearts pounding. Kuo was on edge over this confrontation, seeing the four swordsmen unleashing their might across the city, none of them backing down from the colossal enemy, who was already suffering from our hero's attacks. The faction leaders and important warriors were alert to any outcome. If their friends failed in the attempt, they would immediately go on the attack, although they trusted in their new powers. In Seekvaira, at the Honey and Cherry Cafe, none of the customers could take their eyes off the television. Watching all the battle unfold, the establishment's owner was left breathing heavily as she watched her little baby and his friends fight relentlessly. Ingvild and Suzaku worked to calm her down, the former fanning her with a paper fan, while the latter took her blood pressure, sensing that all the stress, nerves, and scares she was experiencing would make her hypertensive at any moment. While with Felicia she was also a bundle of nerves, she also couldn't stop watching television seeing her love interest fight bravely, and she was so stressed that she devoured anything that was within reach of her hands, and that breads, snacks and finally Ophis and Lilith sweets fell into Felicia's stomach without the pink-haired girl realizing it because of the tantrums and tearful pouts of the Infinity Dragons. And she almost ate the flowers from a vase. If it weren't for little Kunu who almost took it away from her. The Shen Kun, Felicia said nervously, clasping her hands in prayer. Unaware that four girls standing near the cafeteria were watching the battle from whatever angle they could, their eyes were fixed on the cafeteria owner's son. In the underworld, in Lucifer's castle, the traitors still couldn't believe their eyes that those they had abandoned for power and prestige were managing to hold off the enemies who hadn't even managed to scratch them. But seeing the risky move the four swordsmen were making, they had only one thought on their minds. I hope they fail, some worms without power and ambition cannot afford themselves of defeating enemies of our height or of our size. They said in their minds, hoping that Master Hand would crush them. Back in combat. DGHHHHH. The three swordsmen who managed to stop Master Hand were feeling that their strength was being consumed by that. Get out of there. Rias shouted and immediately Issei, Sirzechs and Ashen obey Rias, throwing themselves to the ground. 5. Master Hand fell to the ground, but the three swordsmen managed to narrowly escape the impact zone. The giant hand was in terrible condition, and Rias would now take advantage of this, not only to finish off her enemy, but also to get even for the good blow she had received from him. Crush this, you wanker hand Thorin. Rias shouted at that. FUMMMM. He launched a beam from his yellow grimoire, but it had such destructive power that it could surpass the beams of his former Queen Akeno. The Redeed was now truly shocked. Boom. The lightning struck Master Hand, causing great damage to it. Wow. Master Hand screamed in excruciating pain, arching over as he felt the Redeed's tremendous crushing attack. The swordsmen gathered around their companion, watching as their gigantic enemy writhed on the ground in excruciating pain. Do you think he still wants to fight? Issei said, panting from exhaustion. I can expect anything now, Sirzechs said, wiping his sweat but alert to a treacherous attack. It seems it's over, Rias said. And indeed Master Hand finished arching and soon fell motionless on the platform floor. That was all for the first hand. Then the helicopter. Seeing that the first hand was defeated, he couldn't contain his excitement. Incredible, the first hand has fallen defeated. They won. They won. The reporter shouted. Woo. Everyone in Kuoh shouted with joy. The hope that they would be saved from the gigantic enemies was very high, but the leaders, warriors and soldiers of the supernatural still remained serious because the humans forgot a second fight was taking place where the former pawn of Sona Sitri, the former heir of Baal, one of the last Nekomatas of his subspecies and an adorable pink alien, were confronting the second hand that by itself was the wildest in acting and fighting. Chapter 4. Jonas Lucifer's Castle. The wives of the current Lucifer along with the people who supported them were watching the situation in the human world and could not believe that those they had exiled had managed to defeat those gigantic enemies that had humiliated them on their wedding day. This is not possible. Shouted the alpha of Jonas's harem, Grayfia Lucifuge, seeing how her ex-husband, her ex-sister-in-law, her ex-younger brother and the friend of these three had managed to defeat Master Hand. How could he defeat that miserable demon without power to that hand? Shouted Grayfia, referring contemptuously to Sirzechs. Also, Rias masters other types of spells. If her limited talent only allowed her to create waves of destructive energy, said Venelana, very angry, speaking in such a contemptuous manner about her ex-daughter's talent. Why didn't she tell us? Not even I knew, Venelana-sama said Akeno while she was still resentful of her injuries, but she also looked furious because despite being very close to her now ex-friend, she never knew that the Redeed could control thunder, fire and wind. Furthermore, that filthy human transformed into a dragon, said Tiamat pointing at Ashen, because during the course of the battle he momentarily transformed his head into a dragon, and from his wings came wings and the tail of a dragon. This is clearly an offense to us dragons. I demand that he be punished for such an offense. Not just for you, said Gabriel, very irritated. This is clearly not normal, that Sirzechs obtains a new power when his body revealed that it had no more magical reserves, when he sealed the beast of the apocalypse, that Rias has other powers, that he is a good-for-nothing pervert without having Mio he manages to have a power similar to Sirzechs, and what irritates me the most, that any human becomes a dragon overnight, said Penemu. Mio, upon hearing how the cadre referred to her Issei, couldn't help but show a look of hatred towards her. There is no other option but to investigate them, said Serafal, we have to bring them to the underworld to be held accountable. But how? Asia said, grumbling, I doubt they'll agree to come. Apart from Michael-sama, Azazel sensei, Auden and some leaders who did not agree to exile them, I doubt they will agree to bring them here, said Roswis. And have you heard anything about the vampire faction? Said Zenobia, we haven't heard anything since Klepfit attacked them and Rezelvim's death. We haven't received anything since then, Serafal said, we've sent messages requesting support even for the plan to exile those outcasts of the demons. We haven't received any response from Almenhold-sama, and Valerie Teep said Kiba, even Jano-sama sent them a marriage proposal message, along with a gift which is a vial with his blood, but we haven't received any response. I still remember how Jano-senpai got upset for not receiving a prompt response from Almenhold-sama, and Valerie-chan said Gasper a little nervously. Most likely they are still rebuilding their territory in Transylvania, said Zeodicus, but I think I have the solution to how to bring those demons who stained the honor of our clan, along with that good-for-nothing pervert, and it is that they have clearly broken a law. Everyone in the castle realized what the Gremory patriarch was saying, clearly Sirzechs, Rias, Kaneko and Issei were violating a decree that Jonas himself had declared that they were not welcome in Kuoh, and if they were discovered they would be sentenced to death. It's true, said Grayfia, they are violating a rule that our beloved Jonas-sama established at the time of his exile. It's time to know their whereabouts, capture them and let them rot in Tartarus. In case they resist, kill them without hesitation. Zeodicus and Venelana smiled evilly at what Grayfia said, they had both stopped seeing their children as such, since they stained the honor of their family, the eldest redeemed for becoming weak, despite saving everyone's existence, his daughter Rias, for not leaving Sirzechs alone, Issei for the simple fact of having been a pervert, and it was something that truly disgusted his former harem, as well as his now ex-parents, who supported the idea of capturing and punishing their former son. Volkaroka, with ego and pride flooding her mind, also wanted to punish her little sister Kaneko for supporting someone weak who did not promise to repopulate her species into one of the most powerful races. Clearly the Black Nekomata was very disappointed in her little sister for supporting Issei and being loyal to Rias and Sirzechs. There is no other way ending the disaster in Kuoh, we will proceed to capture those pariahs of the underworld, Serafal said seriously, as wives of the great Lucifer we order it. Hi! Shouted the traitors, with the exception of Mio, who showed some agreement to capture Issei, but she had her own plans, all before the eyes of the leaders and important people who had supported said plot to support the de facto Lucifer. But in that 5. The door to the castle's meeting room swung open, revealing two redeeds who were not at all happy with what they saw. If you touch a hair on my grandchildren's head, you won't live to tell the tale, you self-interested bitches, said clearly a redeed dressed in a demonic aristocracy dress. Dicey's Gremory. Also, if you want to reach them, you're going to have to overcome many obstacles between them, the two of us, said a redeed with pigtails, her face clearly reflecting disappointment. Runia's Gremory. Akasama. Runia's-sama, said Zeodicus incredulously, seeing that his mother and his ancestor were against this smear campaign against Sirzechs, Rias, Kaneko and Issei. Zeodicus Gremory, my beloved great-granddaughter did not raise you this way, Runia said clearly. The ego, the hunger for power and your stupid greed are destroying my beloved clan that I raised with effort. But I do this for the prestige of Zeodicus tried to defend himself. But nothing. Chisa shouted, if I had known that Zekram's bastard hid behind that appearance of a loving and gentle woman, another miser of the Baal, and would infect you with her stupid mentality, I would have taken charge of the clan again and raised my grandchildren alone. Mother-in-law, please respect me, said Venelana very indignantly. She'll call you whatever she wants, stupid girl, or does it bother you that I tell you what you are? Runia said. I demand respect now. Venelana shouted, emanating her aura of destruction, but 5. Runias appeared in front of Venelana and proceeded to punch her, sending her to one of the castle walls, but that was not all, due to the strength of the first-generation demon Gremory went through said wall, sending her to one of the gardens. Respect is earned, shameless boar, Runias said with a death glare at the hole he made. Don't raise your voice in my face, you spoiled brat. Ancestry. Zeodicus shouted, claiming her, but Runias held the Gremory patriarch by the neck. Shut your mouth, you miserable shitty demon, said Runias, just seeing my lineage and what it became, what I hated so much of the unfortunate original Lucifer, with the exception of Rias, Sirzechs-chan and Milikas-chan, just seeing what they did to them, seeing these stupid crude women who changed everything for power, makes me want to exterminate them completely, said Runias very enraged, displaying a little of her power, because if you touch my descendants. Any of you I don't care about having the demonic faction against me, I will destroy you, and you will know why I am one of the first demons to be born directly from Lilith, said the demon very enraged. Great-grandmother calm down, said Chrysis don't stain your hands uselessly, it's not worth it, said Sirzechs' grandmother calmly besides, you forget a small but important detail, said Chrysis Gremory calmly, but her gaze turned gloomy, and a mocking smile appeared on her delicate face, that our descendants and Issei are being personally protected by Ophis Ouroboros and Great Red. The meeting realized that detail they had omitted. If those two knew that they messed with their son of flesh and magic, they would have a guaranteed trip to hell. I won't let them touch my Issei now. At what Rias' grandmother said, they froze in silence, only Rias knew well about the feelings she had for the little brunette. But in Issei's former harem, upon learning that the former Gremory matriarch confessed to being romantically interested in the brunette, something about them didn't please them, and they got upset, and not to mention Mio, because she wasn't going to allow an old woman to take away what was rightfully hers. What are you saying, mother? Zeodicus shouted, totally enraged. How the hell did you fall in love with a human and moreover with a pervert who is nothing without his sacred gear? Are you thinking of betraying my father? For your information, Brad, your father, may he rest in peace, asked Chrysis-chan to find happiness again, Rias said, and if he thinks Issei-kun can make her happy, it's his decision and not yours. Zeodicus was truly enraged at what was happening now. His mother and his ancestor were betraying them. He had even more reasons to search for and kill Issei Hyoudou. Not to mention the brown-haired boy's former parents, knowing that the pervert had attracted their friend's mother horrified them. Once again Issei was making them look bad in front of the demons. If we have nothing else to say, we'll leave, said Rias, and be careful not to do anything stupid, Lucifer, or you will not only suffer the wrath of a dragon goddess. Both Gremories leave the castle, leaving the traitors very furious. On the way out, Rias and Chrysis continued talking. I didn't expect you to say you were interested in Rias-chan's fiancé, Chrysis said, Rias taking a bag of chips out of a pocket dimension, and I almost died laughing when I saw the stupid face Zeodicus made when he found out that. Issei-kun reflected the great qualities that my late husband once had, Chrysis said smiling, well blushing. Do you think that despite my age, Issei wants to be by my side? That doesn't matter to him, said Rias, while putting a potato chip in his mouth. Ophis is the oldest member of her harem, so she can accept you, and Rias-chan doesn't have any problems with you joining him, although she will be very surprised to find out that her grandmother will be her next harem sister. But great-grandmother, I noticed that you sometimes didn't take your eyes off the hologram, Chrysis said, to which Rias was surprised. Are you interested in someone? Rias finishes chewing his fried food, wipes his mouth and smiles. I admitted Issei-kun's, Rias-chan's and Sirzechs-chan's friend, I'm interested in him, Rias said, licking his lips as he remembered a Shen. I'd like to meet him in person. Surprising their great-granddaughter Chrysis, both Gremory girls retreated from the underworld in a circle, doubting that both boys could accept their feelings, despite the abysmal age difference. Opening. Kuo City. Audio sounds. Crazy Hand vs Kirby, Saji, Sarerg and Kaneko. Given the critical situation that had broken out in Kuo City, and with the defeat of Master Hand at the hands of Issei, Ashen, Sirzechs and Rias. Now it is the other group's turn to face the last gigantic enemy. Ahahahaha. Crazy Hand's laughter now sounded more psychotic, and that didn't bode well for the fighters. We must be cautious, said Saji, who instinctively took his weapon, Vampire Killer, from his hip and gripped it tightly. The 3XD members affirmed, but one didn't listen. Poyo. Kirby shouted, running at full speed towards Crazy Hand. Little wait. Kaneko shouted as she saw the tiny pink being launch itself towards the enemy. Kirby throws himself fully against the giant hand, enveloping himself in fire, managing to land a full blow, and suddenly a combo of blows came out of the pinky, throwing his gigantic enemy to the ground. The hand resented it but immediately recovered. Clack. Crazy Hand catches Kirby and slams him to the ground. Pooey. Kirby screamed in pain, but Crazy Hand was far from finishing off the little fighter as he quickly gained altitude. Not on my guard. Kaneko shouted, instinctively throwing her arms out, which surprised her by stretching them like springs. She recompassed herself and grabbed her pink ally and pulled him out of the impact zone. Ham. X5. Crazy Hand had been free-falling in order to crush him, but now he had only fallen to the ground, and as if he were writhing, he was rolling on the ground, thinking he was hurting Kirby. My turn. Saji shouted, I'll get even for what happened a while ago. Waving the legendary Belmont weapon, he proceeds to punish the giant hand in a brutal manner. Crazy Hand writhed as if the blonde's attacks were having a considerable effect on him, but Saji noticed something was a little late in brandishing the whip, something that some of the spectators also noticed. Outside the dome. Kiryu, who was holding the Virian sphere, Murayama and Caddis, who was on crutches since her sprain had been treated in time, were watching attentively, somewhat removed from the crowd. He's using a sacred weapon, said Viridian. What? Caddis said, confused. Saji, he's using a sacred weapon, said Viridian. But how? Kiryu said Genshiro-san is supposed to be a demon and cannot touch sacred objects even by mistake, otherwise he would suffer considerable damage. That's because at the moment that multicolored sphere entered Saji's body, in addition to me being expelled from his body, it also expelled the evil pieces of Sona Citri. In short, Saji became a human again, said the dragon. Are these pawns? Murayama said, showing 4 pawns in his pawns that were now destroyed, and also Sona Kaichu is a demon like Rias-senpai. That's right, but it's not the time to talk about these issues, said a male voice that reflected volley. Lucifer will explain later. Who are you? Kata said, a little uncomfortable with the albino's threatening air. It's volley. Lucifer said Viridian, he's an ally of Issei, Rias and Saji. So somehow Saji freed himself from Citri's Patenko and took on that appearance, said volley without taking his eyes off the confrontation. Girls, I think you'll accompany us to Sinkiaro, there we'll tell you and clarify any doubts you may have, okay? The 3 humans nodded at what the albino said. All that remained was to hope that their friends would be able to overcome this gigantic challenge, although of course, 4 had managed to defeat the first hand, although they didn't know that hidden in some bushes, 3 multicolored spheres were watching their possible carriers. Back to the battle arena. Crazy Hand tried to catch any of his opponents, but they dodged him as if they were on cross country. At this rate we'll get exhausted, Serekh said, dodging the giant hand that tried like a missile to hurt and throw his opponents into the void. Any ideas? Said Kaneko, also panting. We don't even have time to think about anything, said Saji. Poyo. Kirby shouted, calling the attention of his companions. Poyo. Poyo. Shouted the tiny pink being while pointing with his little hands what he was trying to say. Any normal human being wouldn't understand anything little Kirby was saying, but for some reason, Kaneko, Serekh and Saji understood him and they knew what he meant. Very well, said Serekh. Kaneko-chan, you know what to do. Hi, she said while using her arms that stretched out holding Kirby. Hold on a bit, Saji said as he saw the crazy hand was gaining momentum again to launch himself like a missile when FUMMM. The projectile hand came out to attack again. Now. Shouted Saji, who was behind Kaneko. Kaneko threw Kirby into the air with the help of her spring arms. The tiny one couldn't take his eyes off his enemy, who was heading towards his allies like a rocket when he gained enough height. Crack. Kirby had flown off the rock and was thrown into free fall. Everyone attention. Serekh shouted, hoping Kirby's plan would work while he saw the hand getting closer to hurting them, but he also saw Kirby getting closer. 5. Kirby had connected on the back of Crazy Hand. Ah, was the scream that Crazy Hand. There was only one thing to do. Now. Serekh shouted. The first to attack was Kaneko, who immediately connected with a brutal combo of kicks in the style of Kung Fu and Chinese martial arts, something that surprised the albino herself, now blonde, dressed in Chinese attire. I never had such agility and mastery in kicks, said Kaneko in her mind while she continued attacking Crazy Hand, since she only used her blows when necessary, something in her said that he had unleashed, and now she had to release him. Take this. Shouted Kaneko while repelling Crazy Hand with a kick, but with an ascending axe kick releasing all her strength, she throws upward Saji-senpai. The aforementioned man moved and began to move his whip in a pinwheel shape. Crazy Hand continued to receive Saji's attack being thrown by Citri's pawn and immediately launches an uppercut with a knife that he pulled out of his clothes, throwing him off the platform. Now Serekh. Saji shouted. At that Serekh runs out and jumps momentarily off the platform, but he already had his attack ready, just seeing his left fist with its power ready to unleash it. Swallow this. Serekh shouted, unconsciously shouting the following. Our dunk. 5. Serekh's blow was so strong that a sound wave could be heard, sending some dust and debris flying off the platform. Serekh was held in Kaneko's spring-like arms to keep him safe. Ah. It was Crazy Hand's scream as he fell into the abyss. The hand hit the area where Kuo Academy was, and as it hit the ground, a small tremor. Everyone present saw that the hand stopped moving. It only meant one thing. They did it, they did it. The reporter shouted, frantically. Those 7 people and that tiny man have defeated those hands. Kuo is safe. The civilians of the city screamed wildly at the feet of our heroes. They jumped, ran happily and shouted thanks in the direction of the platforms where the fighters who had won were. But the supernatural beings that were infiltrated in the normal people, they felt widely pleased, especially the leaders who witnessed the power above all the dedication of their allies and their friends in the defense of humanity. Especially with Sirzechs, who again proved to be that great warrior that they knew in that war of factions and in the civil war of the demonic faction that despite having been exiled and despised, never hesitated to save a city, especially the one that was forbidden to remain. But suddenly in the sky. Shoo. Everyone saw in the sky that Lumina was beginning to increase the light it gave off as if trying to blind them, but that was not all, the ground was beginning to shake. What's happening? Rias shouted. It was like that sunset when that being appeared in the sky. Sirzechs shouted. Crazy and Master Hand, who had been defeated, began to shine in wisps of light and began to disappear little by little. The leaders and some soldiers loyal to Sirzechs also began to cover their eyes because the light given off by Lumina was unbearable. But suddenly a communication circle appeared in Odin's ear, and upon hearing it, the Allfather couldn't help but grimace in fury. "What's wrong, Odin Dono?" Michael said. "Taisi-san has told me that Seraphol and that damn Grayfia have sent their soldiers to arrest the Gremories, Issei, and those who participated in this," said Odin, annoyed. "What?" Azazel shouted, equally annoyed. "There is no time for complaints, we must prevent those scavengers from arriving and capturing our friend," said Tobio. "You don't have to tell me twice," said Odin, annoyed, who immediately spoke in his other ear. "But Vali, Murayama, Caddis, Kiryu and Viridian." Vali received the call from his adoptive father. "We're going, girls," she said out loud, also covering her face from the light that Lumina gave off. "But," said Murayama. "Once you arrive at Sinkuro you will be able to communicate with your families in a short time. This will become unsafe for you," shouted Vali, who immediately formed a transportation circle. Viridian knew what he was referring to, as she knew that the two Gremory, Kaneko and Issei, were clearly breaking the law in the underworld. Without further ado, the albino transported the three girls and the sealed dragon to the Phantom family restaurant. In the combat zone, the 8 fighters were still covering their faces from what Lumina was doing. But suddenly they saw the dome where they were fighting begin to disintegrate. "How the hell are we going to get down from here?" Ashen said. "For Sirzechs, Sererg, and Rias it will be a piece of cake because of their wings," said Issei. "The problem will be you, me, Kaneko-chan." Rias was about to speak, but suddenly a communication circle with a rune appeared in her ear. "Earl Gemory." "Odin-sama," Rias shouted. "You must get out of there as soon as possible." Odin shouted. Jonas Amon's boar sent soldiers to capture him. Odin said in a tone of voice that clearly reflected hatred and disappointment for those women he once respected. "Take advantage of the fact that this being is blinding everyone with its light to use a transportation circle." Rias understood and obeyed the leader of the Nordic faction. "Thank you, Odin-sama, I promise you will have the cafeteria's special breakfast completely free. Guys, get together," shouted Rias while summoning a circle that curiously no longer had the Gremory clan symbol, but now had the following crest. "What?" But then she sees that 7 people had already gathered around her. "We're all already Rias Buchu," said Kaneko while carrying a Kirby who was starting to get sleepy. "Let's get out of here, otherwise Mrs. Phantom will leave us without dinner for being late," said Rias, who immediately made the circle disappear in the middle of the lighting. And the moment the supernatural allies left. Fum. The blinding light disappeared, as did Lumina, who immediately saw the sun begin to rise over the horizon. Incessure. The Honey and Cherry cafeteria, which belongs to Layla Phantom, celebrated in a big way because they saw how those kids they loved so much had managed to defeat those gigantic hands that threatened the integrity of the inhabitants of that city. Layla, for her part, could now rest easy knowing that her son had emerged victorious alongside his friends, whom she now considered part of her family as well. Not to mention Suzaku, Ingvald, Kunu, Lilith, Lavinia, and Ophis, who were celebrating their friend's victory at Kuoh, although the latter only smiled at the sight, unlike her clone, who celebrated like a child alongside Kunu. For her part, Felicia cried with joy at seeing her beloved safe and sound, while a blush lit up her face. "That's my Ashen," the pink-haired girl said happily. Felicia. But he didn't notice that 5 girls who were present at the cafe and were interested in the son of the owner of said cafe also felt immense joy in seeing their love interest defeat an unusual enemy with the help of his friends. "Ashen-kun," said a blonde dressed in such a striking way while her eyes shone and did not stop shining with excitement while she ate a strawberry and ice cream crepe. "Marin Kitagawa. There is no doubt that he is someone interesting," said a girl with a dark appearance who, although her face reflected stoicism and in some cases disgust, a slight blush was noticeable on her cheeks while she drank a hot drink at the bar where hot coffee was served. "Dry. He's someone incredible," said another raven-haired girl with long pigtails wearing a carmine-colored blouse, a black skirt, and thigh-high stockings. The aforementioned girl kept watching the replay of the fight while eating a chicken sandwich. "Mito Kumi." The 4th girl, who was dressed somewhat extravagantly in a jacket and with her hair dyed 2 colors, was live-streaming her stay in the cafeteria. Hello, here is your friend Enigma broadcasting live from the cafeteria she likes the most," she said, while looking out of the corner of her eye and blushing at the screen where they were broadcasting the son of the owner of said cafeteria, along with Rias, Issei and the others who won. Real name? Ioro. Streamer name? Enigma. While the last interested party was leaving the cafeteria but with her mobile phone glued to her ear. "Hello mom, yes I saw him, Ashen-san came out well," said the girl wearing her uniform, smiling. "Okay, I'll prepare something for him when I see him again," said the girl very excited. "Ashen-kun," said the young lady sighing. "Ueus." Maybe our heroes won this battle, but the war and a very hard battle was about to begin because not only their world was compromised, but an entire multiverse was involved where Lumina had plans for them and it would be very difficult for her to give up, but thanks to those spheres that contained the spirits of those fighters who saw their world fall and would prevent other worlds from falling like theirs, they would do anything to avoid a terrible interdimensional danger. Character Sheets PT.1. The true hero and pillar of the faction alliance. His life took a 180 degrees turn when most of his former harem, family, allies and companions in his entourage turned their backs on Sirzechs for having lost all his power thanks to a plan hatched by Grayfia, Jonas Amon and Mio herself to take away the position of Lucifer in prestige from her brother-in-law and who she truly sees as the true bearer of the title of Lucifer. But ceasing to be the bearer of the now low-class dragon Mio and sending his perversion to the trash, he is chosen as the bearer of the soul of the King of Elis from Fire Emblem Awakening. King Chrome, and thanks to him, he will be able to be a more respected hero again, as is the soul he carries. Maybe he will no longer be the hero of the factions, but he will be the ray of hope for the human world. Due to Chrome's strong desire for justice, which he inherited from Issei, he will have a fearsome nature when it comes to fighting, becoming a terrible enemy for the factions and a powerful ally when it comes to action. Although at first Chrome will not approve of him having a harem when he sees that the girls who are with a brown-haired man truly love him, little by little, he will accept the vision of his bearer. Issei's harem. Rias Gremory Robin, Alpha. Hineko Taoju, Min, second in command. Suzaku Himejima. Ingvald Leviathan. Ophis. Lady Amasтерeth. Selazin Ribbon. Iryuka Glaciolabolas. Seekvaira Gares. Roy Gunbel Felger. Kisses Gremory. Ilmenhold Karlstein. Alri Teeps. Time Kiryu. DXD. Oku no Hero. Oku no Hero. Oku no Hero. Danmachi. Danmachi. Deliveru. Ashen Phantom Corn. When Arena Hyoudou went to England, Issei met Ashen in an arcade tournament, narrowly defeating the brunette. Their friendship began as an arcade rivalry that gradually led them to respect each other and then to have great confidence in each other. Ashen suffered the loss of his father and two brothers in a car accident, which devastated him, and for reasons beyond his control, he had to move from Kuo with his mother to the neighboring city of Senkei'd to take over one of the businesses that his father had in mind before his death. But he maintained communication with Issei, and after the events of the supernatural and subsequently the exile of the two children of the Gremory family, Ashen finds Issei on one of the roads to Senkei'd with Rias, Kaneko and Sirzechs in a deplorable state. Without hesitation, he picks them up along with Lady Phantom and gives them shelter and a roof to live under. Some time later, the supernatural is revealed to Ashen and his mother by their guests and friends of the black-haired man and his current situation. Because of his big heart and selfless help, the soul of the King of Vala and bearer of the dragon vein, Corrin, a hybrid of human and dragon who chose him as his bearer, and because of that, his human nature is clearly altered, and the one who notices it first is Ophis when she feels that her human nature is altered. The life of Ashen and his mother takes an unexpected turn not only when they meet Issei and his friends, but also all those who are involved in the problem against Lumina and the other possessors of the Smash Souls, and above all, dealing with one of the luxuries of a dragon, and that his friend enjoys so much by being a magnet for many women. Ashen's harem. Felicia. Marin Kitagawa. Dry. Ueus. Mito Ikumi. Enigma. DXD. DXD. Oku no Hero. Oku no Hero. Oku no Hero. Danmachi. 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 Deloru. Chapter 5. Jonas Lucifer's Castle. The leaders were gathered in the chambers of the Mau Lucifer, but it wasn't to deal with the attacks of Crazy and Master Hand, it was to. Who gave you the authorization to send soldiers to arrest them? Ajuka shouted furiously to Janos Amon's wives. They are transgressing a decree that Lucifer-sama made at the time of his exile. Grayfia shouted furiously. Oh, of course a decree made our backs. Shouted Azazel, who was beyond furious. Of course they knew that we would oppose them doing an injustice to Sirzechs, damned bitches. More respect for our fallen angel people. Seraphol shouted angrily. Oh, what will you do, failed Ataku? Said Shiva, challenging Seraphol upon seeing the Hindu god facing her, which made her instinctively retreat since the little-haired girl knew she was no match for the god of destruction. You only reveal how mean you are, or do I remind you that you resigned from your position as Mau Leviathan to marry that pathetic demon? Does that mean you lack authority here? If they hadn't intervened in time, Kuo would be in ruins and with many fatalities, with the added bonus that they would be invading other cities, and it's worth mentioning that this territory is under your total custody, Sona Citri. said Auden, while the youngest of the Citri just turned her face to the side because she didn't accept being told her responsibilities. If this disaster had escalated to a greater proportion, the demons would be in serious trouble with the Shinto pantheon, especially with Amaterasu, Susanoo and Kagutsuchi-sama. They don't tolerate this kind of thing in their territories, and it's worth mentioning that the one who asked for permission for you to settle in Japan was this slut dressed as Sailor Moon. "Don't insult one Isama, you old pervert," said Sona very furiously. "You have enough balls to tell me things," Lucifer's Borodin said mockingly, increasing his aura, making Sona begin to suffocate. "Sona-sama," said her entourage, very worried when they saw how the father of all dominated her without any difficulty. "Enough, Auden-sama," Ross was shouted, very upset. Auden, seeing Sona on the ground panting even harder, stopped emitting his aura to leave the youngest of the Citri alone. "Pathetic. You are taking on duties that do not correspond to you," Michael said with a rather intimidating calm, "because you are wives of that de facto leader. You believe you have the authority to send soldiers to attend to your silly little girl's screams. The one who has the authority in this case is that fifth-rate devil, not you." Anayasama Gabriel reproached, "They are clearly violating the law that Janos-chan established." "You must be supporting our actions, Michael-sama," Irina pleaded. Michael just rubbed his face in total annoyance at his sister as the stupidity of his harem sisters caught on like a cold and he didn't even notice. "As it was said, a law that was approved under the table," said Ijuka, very stunned, "and just as you approve things without our authorization, we will do the same. So, as Mayu and leader of the faction, I order that no soldier of the alliance approach the heroes who defeated those giant hands without the due consent of us, the leaders of the alliance." The other leaders, with the exception of Yusaka, nodded at what Ijuka said, indicating that they approved the measure. "Is this a joke, Ijuka?" Yusaka said, looking in disbelief. "And by the way, you give those outcasts the title of heroes. Any problem with that?" Ijuka said calmly, "You would have rightfully earned it if you had defeated them, but after such a pitiful performance that seemed like a comedy by Moliere, you don't even deserve the title of rookie comedian." The traders were upset by how the green-haired Mayu categorized them. "And above all," Rias Gremory's former entourage Azazel said mockingly, which infuriated those mentioned of being the great revelation in the rating games, "they are not even the shadow of those times, not even with the command of Amon's heir." Of course, on a whim, they discarded the brain, part of the strength but above all the soul of said entourage. And not to mention Sona Citri's entourage, which was presumed to have one of the most analytical kings of the underworld, said Shiva sarcastically, "and the one who ended up working as a true team was that member you despised, Citri's Patenko." Ria's former entourage and Sona's entourage couldn't contain their discomfort when mentioning people who now hated them the most. "That is not true," said Akeno, very furious. "We just stop making excuses, hybrid," Shiva said, very annoyed, offending Akeno greatly. "Without Rias Gremory, without Kaneko Taoju, and especially without Issei Hyoudou, they are nothing, and it was them along with Saji Genshiro, Suraired Bale, that pink ball, and that human who is with them who defeated those hands." "Well, the meeting is over, we should return to our home," said Ijuka. "I think we should have a last-minute meeting," said Auden, "besides there's nothing better than a breakfast before resting in that place." Michael, Azazel, Shiva and Ijuka understood what he meant immediately and began to lick their lips in a sign of hunger. "I wish for a good red fruit tea and freshly baked bread," said the green-haired Mayu, remembering that Issei served said herbal infusion, "and don't even mention the house special of the cafe owner, it's what makes Falbium wake up to eat it." "It's true, the ramen they make there is spicy and delicious," said Shiva, while remembering the firstborn of the phantoms who served him a dish worthy of the god of destruction. "Not to mention her full breakfast with pancakes," said Auden, referring to a redeed with tangled hair. "I'll tell my wife to catch me at the cafeteria." "I want some coffee that our little ally makes," said Azazel, referring to the little Nekomata promised by Issei. "And don't even mention Sir's caramel flan," said Michael as the designated leaders disappeared. Said leaders leaving the main room without caring about the bad gestures of the traders and the patriarchs of Gremory, Citri, Phoenix, the Hyoudou and some soldiers who also sold their loyalty to the traders, but upon hearing such comments, curiosity began to invade them. "To have breakfast?" said Seraphol very curiously. "But why do leaders bother eating food from inferior beings?" said Pinemu. "I don't like it when they hide things," said Gabriel, looking at his older brother with some resentment. "It's more than obvious that they're hiding something from us, and we, as wives of the great Lucifer, will discover it." The traders nodded at what the Seraphim said, and the people who sympathized with them nodded in agreement, but without knowing that only little by little would they put the rope around their necks, since they would not only disobey the mandate of their leaders, but challenging them could lead to confrontations with irreparable consequences. Opening. Sinkyaro. Cafeteria honey and cherry. Domingo 7 a.m. In the adjacent city of Kuo, Sinkyaro City woke up seemingly normal with just one small detail. The neighbors were surrounding the cafeteria waiting for it to open, not only to have breakfast, but also to meet the kids who went to stop the gigantic enemies that caused a state of emergency in the neighboring city. But they noticed something was at the door. Close will open tomorrow. But not only that, but the curtains were practically blocking the view of the phantom cafeteria, and you might wonder why. There is an assembly where the supernatural members, the girls dressed as maids and in the case of Ingvild and Ashen, dressed as chefs, were going to discuss the issue of Crazy and Master Hand, along with Mrs. Phantom and some witnesses of the fight such as Vali, Murayama, Addis and Kiryu, who kept hugging Issei's arm because seeing him alive had made her very happy and she didn't want to separate from him for any reason, despite the jealousy and rabid monkey screams of Rias and the other girls who love the brown-haired boy. And with Kirby, well, now he's sleeping. Well, my parents already know about our whereabouts, said Murayama. Unfortunately our home, Yui-chan's and Ika-chan's, were left in ruins. They will be in the city before nightfall, said Yui-kadis, that is if they escape the traffic on the roads to leave Kuo. And we thank you very much for your hospitality, Layla-san, said Kiryu with a bow. No need to be thankful, girl, said the phantom matriarch. Issei-chan's friends are welcome, feel free to live however you like as soon as you have a new house. I think they've been a while, said Vali while taking an espresso courtesy of Sirzechs. Most likely by scolding those mules, said Seikvaira, who was also drinking an espresso. And knowing them well, they will be justifying or rather grumbling about their actions, said Suzaku Himejima, dressed as a maid sitting on a chair while drinking tea. Everyone nodded at what the former leader of the Himejimas said, while on the other side, Ashen was reading a little when he felt someone stand next to him. Ashen-san, Ophis said, staring at her little dragon's best friend with eyes that showed curiosity. Is something wrong, Fist-chan? Said the firstborn of the phantoms. Why do I feel dragon energy in your body? Ophis said, pointing at the only surviving son of the phantom marriage. Everyone looked at Ashen at what Ophis said. It's true, I feel draconic energy in your body, Ashen Phantom Vali said. At that, the wings of Vali's sacred gear appeared. I feel it too, said Alba, but somehow your body is processing it differently, very different from how Vali treated it in his draconization. It's true, the Viridian sphere that was resting on a table near Saji now said your energy is in a state of hibernation, so to speak it's there, but for some reason you can't access it. Now that I think about it, Ashen, in the fight you transformed into some kind of dragon, said Issei. I don't know how to say it, said the same person, pointed out somewhat uncomfortable, but at the moment of fighting, something in me made me transform. You know that I have no experience whatsoever in fighting, and I don't even know how to hold a sword properly. You have a point in your favor, Ashen-san, Rias said thoughtfully. In the same way it could be said that the same thing happened to me. Everyone here knows that I am only a user of the power of destruction. I have always used my power, but I have never used any type of elemental magic or black magic, and something in me seemed to know such attacks. I agree, said Saji. I was surprised by the fact that he could handle a whip and sacred things. And that's why we need a consultation with the leaders, said Sirzechs. Sirzechs-sama, you are also a leader, said Layla. You should not underestimate yourself, even though in my eyes, I also see you as my son. Layla-san, I am no longer a leader as such, the Redeed said very humbly, not after I lost my demonic power and my dishonorable exile. Ani-sama, stop underestimating yourself, Rias said seriously. Maybe the demons and part of the alliance don't see you as such, but you must understand that even though you sacrificed all your power, you earned the respect of the true leaders and the people who truly support you, because they still see you as a leader, Rias said, smiling at her brother, and immediately hugged him. There are still people who truly support you and love you unconditionally. It's true, Sirzechs-sama, said Kaneko. Maybe your parents, the frozen mummy of your ex-wife, stop seeing you as such, but remember that there are people in Sinkyaro who are waiting for you with open arms. We are a team, but the important thing, we are a family that supports each other. Sirzechs looks around at that Issei, Ashen, Saji, Vali, Seikvaira, Layla, Ophis, Kunu, Lilith, Ingvild and Suzaku nodded at what Rias and Kaneko said. Kiryu, Kadis and Murayama were getting an idea of what had happened to the Gremory and those who accompanied him. The Redeed could not help but show a genuine smile at what was said. Maybe he had lost a status that kept him at the top of the demonic faction, but now that he does not have it, he has something that made him feel comfortable, something he did not have with his parents, or with his ex-wife and most of the demons. We are a real family, said the Redeed without stopping smiling. All that's missing is Milica's being with us. But then a noise was heard behind the counter. By the way, did you tell the other maids that there would be no service today? Layla said. Don't worry, Layla-san, everyone was notified, said Kaneko with a smile. I say this because the only ones who can use the back entrance of the cafeteria are the maids and the workers, said Layla as she saw how the door lock was about to turn. Okay, Kaneko notified some maids, and who notified the other party? Suzaku said. Everyone was silent when. It was me, Ophis said with a poker face while calmly eating a rice ball. Did you tell all the maids that it was your turn to be Ophis-chan? Issei said. The lowly goddess of infinity was thinking for a brief moment when. I'm missing one, said Ophis, hitting her head as a sign that she screwed up. Would anyone believe her if she didn't keep her stoic face? Everyone was left blue-faced upon learning that the existence of the supernatural was about to be revealed to an innocent person. "Ra, quickly, call Auden Sama and the others, must not appear." Ingvald shouted, very scared. Too late, said Ishen when they saw that many magic circles were starting to appear. Oh no, oh no. Sirzechs said like a madman and running from one place. Lilith-chan, go stop him from opening the door now, Ra. Said Layla Phantom, but she sees that Ophis' clone, who was also wearing a mini-maid outfit, took a broomstick and started hitting the top of the cafeteria. What are you doing, Lilith-chan? Lilith detected intruders, said the dragon lowly innocently, then she applied a little force to the blows with the stick on the roof of the cafeteria. Crash. The only part where it hit was destroyed and immediately. Wow. 5 female silhouettes fell to the floor screaming in surprise, and the surprise of having been caught. Everyone there recognized the intruders. Lilith has done a good job, she said to Layla Phantom, who was about to have her soul taken by a grim reaper from Hades, given the current situation, while the dragon lowly looked at her with stars in her eyes. Lilith is a good girl, and I deserve a chestnut brownie. Of course, said Suzaku, more nervous than usual as she watched the magic circles increase in intensity. I'll do it for you later, said the former leader of the Himejima to a lowly who nodded fervently. But what are you doing here, Rintasaka-san, Uea-san, Marin Kitagawa-san, Rias said, very shocked to see her friend Ishen's love interests. The three of them complained of pain. Arja-san. Ioro-san. Said Ishen, seeing both girls nervous. The first one had a face of ecstasy, seeing the boy of her dreams, despite the fact that she hit her face when she fell, while the second one just laughed out of nervousness. Good morning. Said a calm voice as everyone saw the back entrance. Ophis-chan, don't tell me that the one you didn't warn is Felicia. Said Ingvald with some fear. Hi. She said, raising her arms in a sign of why. As if she didn't care, and in truth she didn't care since she was drinking tea and continued eating natto calmly now. Oh hello. Felicia greeted again with a smile, but it disappeared when the faction leaders made their appearance. Was the only thing Felicia said when she saw Auden appear with his wife Freya, Shiva with his wife Parvati, Michael, Azazel, Zeus and Ajuka. The pink-haired girl remained static for a few seconds until 5. He fainted from shock. But not only she, but also the 5 intruders, had seen the leader's appearance. They saw how the supernatural workers were acting nervously. Issei, Rias and Ishen just knelt down and kept saying I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Suzaku started fanning a fainted Layla who was sitting with a paper fan while they muttered, kill me, while Sirzechs just put his hand on his face and said, what's missing? But the ones who were calm were Saji, Sarah and Vali, who looked at the leaders with respect, although with shame at those who acted childishly, and the other girls Caddis, Murayama and Ika Kiryu. A drop of sweat ran down their heads. I think you owe us an explanation, don't you, guys? Michael said, a little confused by the strange situation that had arisen at the leader's favorite cafeteria. His other faction mates nodded, as they weren't going to get a proper explanation for the way their allies were acting. I don't see the point in lying to our guests. I think we should reveal our worlds to them. All the leaders nodded while the intruder's skin turned to chalk because they couldn't get over the shock of seeing something that wasn't supposed to exist. An explanation of the supernatural, and 99 burps later. On the largest table in the cafeteria, dirty dishes were about to fall off the table as the leaders ate like there was no tomorrow. On the floor, seated in Caesar mode, were the intruders who were still in shock. Felicia was laid down on a sofa while she was covered with a blanket, while the others stood waiting for them to finish their breakfast, which seemed like it would feed an entire army regiment. Ah, delicious. Shiva shouted after swallowing his 20th serving of extra spicy ramen. It's not for nothing that this is one of my favorite places to have a good breakfast. Shiva manners, Parvati said calmly while eating curry with rice. I'm glad you liked our dragon's breath ramen, Shiva-sama, said Layla, thanking the god of destruction for his words. Wow, Sirzechs, it seems that the change of routine was good for you, my friend, said Azazel, while enjoying an espresso coffee. You're right, said the rejuvenated Redeed, I prefer doing this kind of things than being tied to a desk doing paperwork, said Sirzechs, serving Michael a decaf. Out comes the 34th order of pancakes smothered in maple syrup for Auden Ama and Freya-sama. Rias shouted. Both Norse gods' eyes lit up. I'm going to start removing the dirty dishes, said Kaneko while she was accompanied by Kunu and Lilith, who were bringing a shopping cart, leaving the plates, cups and things that the leaders used. Well, while Auden-sama and Freya-sama finished their breakfast, said Michael first, in response to what you asked us, Sirzechs, I must tell you that there is no information about that entity that replaced the solar star in the sky for a time. My brothers, with the exception of Gabriel, searched our library in the sky, but we did not find anything referring to it. We didn't find anything in Gregory either, said Azazel. In our writings we didn't find anything either. We thought of visiting the ancient temple of the original mass, but we only wasted time. I don't even know what that thing is, said Ophis, helping to pick up the stuff. Even though Red and I are the oldest beings in existence, it's the first time I've seen something like that. In short, we are facing something relatively unknown to our understanding, said Sirzechs. It disappeared when we defeated those hands. And that entity appeared 5 days ago in the sky, said Kaneko-chan. 5 days ago, the de facto leader's wedding took place with those women, Ajuka said, and the attack on the underworld took place, resulting in Jean Amon and Razor Phoenix being kidnapped by those hands, and nothing has been heard from them. An entity appears, attacks everywhere and kidnaps, said Ashen. Ah, it only raises more questions than answers, said Shiva, somewhat annoyed. I wish there was something that would give us an idea of what we're facing. Everyone was left thinking about what the Hindu god had said when. We can tell you something, said a voice in Rias, who immediately shone her body blue. An energy of that color surrounded the younger Rias, but not only her, but also Issei, Ashen, Sirzechs, Kaneko, Saji and Seikvaira began to shine. Everyone saw this phenomenon in others, with Kadis, Murayama and Kiryu being impressed by such a demonstration, while the intruders continued to be surprised by what they saw. The energy surrounding the aforementioned began to separate from them, and they began to take the form of human silhouettes when the silhouettes revealed the characters our heroes had transformed into to defeat Master and Crazy Hand. Hello, nice to meet you, said a silver-haired girl with pigtails. I know you have questions, but first of all we must introduce ourselves to you. My name is Robin, I am the strategist spirit that resides in Rias Gremory, she said politely. My name is Chrome, I am a former sovereign, I am Robin's partner, and I am the spirit that resides in Issei Hyoudou, said the aforementioned, smiling at the silver-haired girl. Author's note. In Fire Emblem Awakening for the 3DS I have that ship. Robin Fem X Chrome. At the presentation of both spirits, Rias and Issei smiled lovingly and blushed because being possessors of those spirits, it was more than clear that both were destined to be together. Well, first of all, my name is Korin, said the being that was next to Ashen. I am a descendant of a dragon and of course, I reside in Ashen Phantom. The girls interested in Ashen couldn't process any more information. A dragon? Said Marin, Rin, Ioro, Tharja and you. So that's the reason why you have that draconic power, Ophis said, looking at Korin and then Ashen. My name is Min Min, said the girl who was next to Kaneko. I am the spirit that this lady carries, so do not be surprised if your craving for Chinese noodles increases alarmingly, said the Chinese fighter to the Nekomata in a mischievous way. I am Simon Belmont, a vampire hunter, and I am the spirit that resides in Saji Genshiru, said the blonde-haired spirit politely. I am Terry Boggart, a lover of good battles, and it is something that I have in common with my bear Seikvaira Bale, said the blonde with a ponytail when he saw the aforementioned with a knowing smile. And finally, my name is Roy, said the Redeed with a bow who is next to Sirzechs, bearer of the Sword of Seals and the Dragon Seal, spirit that resides in Sirzechs Gremory. And we are the spirit of Smash. Change of scene. Mundo Damatsu. Horario, Chimney Mansion. In the main hall of the mansion, which once belonged to the god Apollo and, due to a war game, was now in the possession of our favorite busty loli, the goddess Hestia. A meeting was taking place with 2 other goddesses who were being escorted by the captains and their families, while on the table were posters with the legend, "Wanted," standing out. Another day without any clues about your family, Freya, said Hestia, a bit tired, nor has there been any news about Daphne Loros, the Caliph sisters, or your children Loki. Freya just nodded with a somewhat sad smile, while the person next to her put his hand in support. Said Loki, if only Bede hadn't been as impulsive as always he wouldn't have been kidnapped by those hands, but not only him but also Lafia, Finn, Raul and Gareth were kidnapped by those hands. I never thought that those gigantic enemies would cause so much damage in Horario, said Freya, although I am grateful that your children Hestia, especially your adorable bunny, yours Loki, but I also thank you very much for helping me at the last minute so that those hands would not kidnap me. Well, as you read, dear readers, Horario was also a victim of attacks by Crazy and Master Hand, causing extensive material damage and leaving it almost in ruins. Thanks to certain characters, they managed to repel and defeat said hands. But the damage was already done, and said hands had kidnapped more people than in the DXD dimension. Because of that, those characters belonged to the families of Hestia, Loki and the only member of the Freya family. So for the protection of the 3 goddesses, they made a temporary alliance for the protection of their children, and in the case of Freya, the only member who was by her side, who shared something that our heroes of the DXD dimension carried since the disaster began in the underworld and in Kuo. You are very lucky, Hestia, said Freya, that no one from your family was kidnapped by those hands. I never thought I'd hear that from you, Freya, Hestia said. As far as I knew, you didn't care if someone in your family got hurt, Loki said, as long as they carried out your tasks. Hey Kami-sama, I think we're getting off topic, Bell said somewhat nervously, while scratching his cheek with his right hand that had the smash symbol. I agree with Belcrenel, said Rivera, who had the same symbol in his right hand. The question here is to continue searching for the missing or to support the reconstruction of Aurelio. Unfortunately, the first option with all the pain in the world, Freyja-sama and Loki-sama, I think we should abdicate, said Indra seriously. We have searched outside of Aurelio for any clue of the missing. We have also searched in quite dangerous territories and more for families that do not sympathize with Aurelio, but despite everything, they gave us permission to search without any success. But what if those hands attack again? Said Ace Wallstein, who also wore the symbol but on her lower back. Belle was going to answer but. Shoo. The glow began to blind outside the mansion. That light? Mikoto shouted. It's like that time that entity appeared. Haraham shouted. That means he's back. Belle shouted. And the albino was not mistaken because when the glow ended, Lumina had appeared in the sky of Aurelio. But then. Boom, boom, boom. Many explosions began to be heard, the screams of civilians began to be heard, also of some adventurers who were being victims of these attacks. The three goddesses heard that, but suddenly. Bam. The mansion door is heard and everyone sees an elf dressed as a maid who arrived a little injured. Ryu, said Belle. Belcrenel the elf shouted, upset. We need your help. What's happening, elf? Loki said somewhat nervously. Lafia, then the others who were missing, they are back, said Ryu Lion, but with the tone he said things, it was not one of relief but quite the opposite, but they are destroying our area with other unknown beings. The three goddesses looked at each other. Haraham, stop them and protect Aurelio, said Hestia, to which the named ones nodded. Rivera and Ace-chan, said Loki, I know you wouldn't like to hurt Lafija, but do it for the safety of Aurelio. Both members of the Loki family nodded. Indra Freyja said, now if it is necessary to end the lives of your former companions, do not hesitate and do it for Aurelio. The aforementioned nodded. What are we waiting for? To action, Bell shouted as his emblem glowed and he proceeded to transform. Let's go. Link. Help me in this fight, said Haraham, also transforming. Zelda. Lend me your strength, said Rivera. Once again. The action, said Ace, also transforming. Lucina. By the time, let's work together, said Indra as he transformed. Joker. The members of said families who had transformed ran out of the chimney mansion, leaving the three goddesses and the rest of their families in said building. Lumina had returned to said dimension to cause more destruction and chaos, but now the Smash Fighters of the Danmachi universe would confront their former comrades, although they did not like the fact of facing them. If there was no other way for the safety of Aurelio, their goddesses and their families, they would attack without any mercy. Character sheets 2. Belcrenel Link. Our favorite adventurer from Aurelio, nicknamed Rabbitfoot, is given a sign by fate that his goal of becoming a hero may possibly come true, as the day before a date with Surflova, Freyja, Aurelio suffers an attack by Crazy Hand and Master Hand. This causes great chaos and destruction, comparing them to something similar to the destructive step of the worst living calamities, one of the monsters that escaped from the dungeon and was responsible for the destruction of the Hera family, as well as the Zeus family, the Black Dragon. Powerless against the destruction and seeing how those hands defeated and kidnapped both his allies and powerful people. Not caring for their well-being, confronts Crazy Hand, who had in his power the elf Lafia, the wolfman Betloga and the dwarf Gareth Landrock, who had succumbed to the gigantic beings on Daedalus Street in order to free them, but was easily defeated. Even using Argonaut could do nothing. But seeing that Crazy Hand was going to attack the Hestia mansion, but seeing that his target was Cassandra Ilion and the goddess she serves. Hestia, despite having been brutally beaten, still wanted to help and attack, but help came unexpectedly, as the spirit of the Hylian warrior Ling corresponds to Belle's wishes to help, who immediately takes possession of Zeus's adopted grandson. Transformed and obtaining great power, Belle along with Rivera and Haraham, who had the same situation as Belle, transforming into Palutena and Zelda respectively, managed to defeat Crazy Hand, but it was too late, since the enemy had fulfilled its purpose. Now Belle's new goal is to recover the kidnapped adventurers and children of the families damaged by the enemy, and above all, take care of his goddess and Aurelio. Param. Ace Wallenstein Lucina. Haraham Zelda. Hestia. Yamato Mitoko. Lilaruka. Ryu Lion. Freya. Cassandra Ilion. Joker. The story of Indra is set in the kingdom of Rakia. Previously he was a soldier in the service of Ares. His life was very comfortable, but seeing that he rose without difficulty in rank, and seeing that the army of Ares had no motivation other than to serve the god Meathead in search of a true purpose and not to be a simple soldier, Indra decides to renounce the kingdom of Rakia and move from Aurelio to be an adventurer, of course. He had to make his decision clear to the god with several blows and the god's teeth stamped on the ground. On his way to Aurelio, he meets the god Hermes, but has love at first sight with the captain of the family of the messenger of Zeus. Asfial Andromeda for a time decided to work with Hermes and his family to earn some money. As time passed, Asfi and Indra got to know each other better, and there were many conversations they had and many things in common that they ended up declaring their love for each other. But, the day Aurario was attacked by Crazy and Master Hand. The Hermes family with Indra dedicated themselves mainly to the evacuation of Aurario. Following the order of his temporary boss, he enters a ruined Aurario, but on his way, he sees that Master Hand was destroying the bar the Lady of Abundance, and saw how the members of the Freya Familia were cruelly defeated and even kidnapped, seeing how Otter, the strongest adventurer of the Familia and of Aurario, was easily defeated by Master Hand, deciding to support the evacuation of the waitresses, of the matron of the bar. Everything was fine, but seeing that the colossal enemy was returning and was going to fall on Sir Flova, the spirit of Ren Amamaya, better known as Joker, the leader of the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, takes possession of Indra, and when transforming into his character, along with a newcomer Ace Wallenstein, who came to help with the evacuation and who had also transformed into Lucina. They managed to defeat Master Hand, but with no chance of recovering the members of the Freya family. In gratitude for her service, Sir transformed into Freya. She offered to let her join her family, or what remained of it, since she saw all her powerful children kidnapped. Indra accepted the goddess's offer as long as she allowed him time to spend with Asfi, which Freya accepted without hesitation, but on the condition that he not only protect her, but also her beloved bunny. Couples. Asfial Andromeda. Oku no Hero. Oku no Hero. Chapter 6. The city of Aurario, the labyrinth city containing a dungeon for adventurers blessed with the gods to explore, battle the monsters within it, and quickly level up their skills, was going through a more critical time than the one they experienced a few years ago when the Black Dragon wreaked death and destruction. Explosions, screams of pain, buildings collapsing, clashing weapons, magic circles being summoned were all being seen by the 5 adventurers who were containing the spirits of the Smash Fighters and had transformed. They ran towards Babel, where they found to their horror that the main entrance of the tower was a branch of a hospital. Several adventurers lying on the ground being healed by the guild workers from the Die Insect family. Also by the adventurers who specialized in the use of healing magic. But unfortunately, other adventurers did not run with the same luck since they had a blanket over their bodies and some had traces of blood in vital areas, and to the side they had the weapons with which they fell in battle, staffs, swords, spears. As a way to reveal who it was. "This is worse than I imagined," said Belle, walking over the body of an elven adventurer. Araham could only cover her mouth with her hands in horror. She had never seen so much blood on the wounded, not even when her former captain Phryne Jamal went to great lengths to seduce the adventurers who fell into her clutches. "We must continue," said Indra seriously, "although I can't believe that those who are our allies, members of my family and the Loki family, could do this." "Well, believe it, Ragnell-san, all the adventurers under my care have fallen due to the attacks of your family," said a silver-haired woman wearing the doctor's attire, approached the 5 adventurers seriously, while in her hands, she had healing material, while she addressed a Palom adventurer. "Ermid-san," said Link Bell, seeing the captain of the Die Insect family tirelessly attending to a Palom as a patient, "are you okay?" "Yes, fortunately our now enemies have not approached Babel," said Ermid. "They have attacked very little in the perimeter of Babel, compared to a few weeks ago when those hands destroyed the western area of Aurario, the red light district where the Ishtar family was, and one of the shops of the goddess Hephaesto." As Ermid began to heal the Palom who had puncture wounds on her shoulder, the only member of Freya Familia approached them. "Hey Palom," said Indra dryly, "who did that to you?" "Who do you think?" said the offended Palom. "It was your friend, Alan Frommel, who was accompanied by the elf of the Loki family. Those bastards killed my adventure group," she shouted while pointing at 4 bodies that were covered with a cream-colored blanket. "Two things, Palom," said Indra. "First, he is not my friend. I did not even have the honor or the misfortune of knowing him. I only know that he is someone strong, and it was from anecdotes that my goddess told me. And 2, I need to know where he attacked you, and above all, were you lucky enough to do any damage to them?" "They attacked me near the Colosseum," said the Palom. "Even though many adventurers attacked both of them, they continued as if nothing had happened. I tried to attack Lafija, but the moment my chakram connected with her body, she crashed as if she had hit a steel wall." "You too," said a dwarf who was bandaged in one eye and wearing a sling on his left arm. "I tried to attack the werewolf in the ruins of the Twilight Mansion with my axe personally made by Hephaesto, and it only took touching his arm for my weapon to break into 1,000 pieces. My magic was useless," said a sad mage who had her hands bandaged, but her face was completely covered in ointment for burns. "I had my confrontation in the ruins of Folkvagr. I cast my magic on the dwarf Gareth and a blonde-haired guy I never met, but he used fire magic, so powerful that he ended up incinerating my staff and part of my body. I was saved by pure miracle, but my friends," sniff, "did not survive." Our 5 adventurers, upon hearing the testimony, began to think and put together the loose ends of what they heard. "They are attacking the most remote areas of Babel," said Rivera, "but the most important thing was that no attack harmed them." It's like the day those giant hands attacked Harahim said. Nothing hurt them on their path of destruction. None of my attacks managed to damage them before Lucina Dono took possession of my body, A said dryly. Once I transformed, that's when we were able to defeat those hands. But now I see and hear it, that time the hands were only dedicated to destroying buildings and kidnapping, now that entity that appeared in the sky, our friends appear and begin to attack the adventurers, said Bell. I think it's time to act, said Indra. The first still hear the sound of the battles still being fought, said Indra. This is how we will act. Harahim and Rivera will go to the Twilight Mansion ruins. Both women nodded and started their march north to Arario. L and A's, you will go south, where the Folkvarg was, said Indra, looking at the couple who nodded and immediately started walking. And what will you do, said Ermid. It's just obvious, I'll go to the Colosseum. I want to know how powerful the children of the goddess who gave me her blessing are, said Indra, turning his back on the captain and heading towards the west of Arario. Ermid and those who gave their testimony saw it as the only adventurers who had defeated Crazy Hand and Master Hand separated to face those who had left them in that state. A state of helplessness had taken hold of them because they five saved them from Arario being almost destroyed. Be careful, the four said in their heads. Well, out of hours. The borders of Arario that were destroyed by previous attacks were all uninhabited and just total desolation. Pack. The bipedal creature was running towards the borders of the Orientales of Arario when it sees Lumina in the sky. That was all he could say. Suddenly, he saw a small basket with 5 delicious apples and an abandoned cargo, holding several objects that presumably belonged to someone who had tried to escape from Arario. Wow. The 5 apples disappeared in an instant, then the bipedal figure ran and entered the city of Arario, where he would have an encounter with one of the adventurers with a smash spear. Arario, the Colosseum. The situation in the Colosseum was worsening, as 2 of the adventurers who were reported missing in the attack by Master and Crazy Hand were threatening an entire battalion of adventurers. Somehow, the opposing adventurers managed to drive the enemies inside the Colosseum. Alan from L and Lafia Viridis, showing a different appearance in which their skin, hair and clothing shone with the same color as Master and Crazy Hand, with the added bonus that their eyes were completely dull and a totally cold temperament. The members of the Freya and Loki families respectively were causing a massacre against the adventurers. Many fell either by the spear and strength of the Catman or by Lafia's fencing and magic skills. "Ugh!" shouted an adventurer as he was thrown into the walls of the Colosseum. "This stinks," shouted a mage, barely getting up while her clothes were deteriorated by the attack she received. Alan was facing off with 4 level 3 and 4 adventurers who were trying to stop him at all costs, but the Catman skillfully dispatches the first one who was carrying an axe. The adventurer launched a diagonal slash, but the Catman jumped on the axe and kicked him in the mouth. The second adventurer tried to attack him in the air with his sword, but Alan disarmed him with a horizontal slash with his spear and threw the spear into his abdomen. The former vice-captain of the Freya family saw that 2 Amazons were going to confront him with bare fists. The first one threw a blow towards Alan's face, but boom. The Amazon was horrified to see that her blow had no effect, and immediately Alan counterattacked by hitting her twice, one in the stomach and another with a hook to the Amazon's face, throwing her into the walls of the Colosseum. The other Amazon felt scared and tried to retract, but it was too late. Alan grabbed her by the hair, whipped her twice on the ground, and a third time he sent a group of adventurers flying with enormous force, who ended up being knocked down. Suddenly Lafia begins to invoke magic as a magic circle appeared below her, and immediately a ring surrounded her. "Are you invoking magic without any chant?" said a winded magician. Suddenly the magic circle where he was standing changed to a reddish color. "This magic, I've seen it," said a Palom. "Elf ring," said a terrified healer, because she knew of the terrible power that Lafia's magic reached, and she was right. The attack she invoked was causing the Colosseum to start rumble and the half-destroyed areas to end up on the ground. She will use Ray Levitain. Everyone take cover. Lafia had her attack ready to wipe out not only the adventurers but also the entire Colosseum. The adventurers who were still able to stand could only cover themselves uselessly on the ground, awaiting their imminent end when the footsteps of a person running were heard louder. "Get out of the way," shouted a voice as a shadow entered and immediately took out some firearms and bang. X5. The onslaught of firearms hit Lafia, and the force of the bullets interrupted her spell, and she fell to the ground with a crash. The adventurers in the Colosseum saw who could manage to injure Lafia, and they also managed to knock Alan down. An Indra Dragnell said a Palom upon seeing the only and for the moment the captain of the Freja family. The aforementioned looked at the adventurers who were still alive and wounded. "This is tiring me out," Indra said with great annoyance. "Everyone go to Babel and get cured. I will face those 2. "What the hell are you saying?" said an adventurer. "This is a great opportunity to raise our ranks." "Don't take everything, son of Freja," shouted an Amazon who could barely stand. Many adventurers complained to Indra, even though he saved their skin from Lumina's emissaries, he could only cover his face because he couldn't believe what they were saying. "There's no doubt you guys crossed that tiny line between being brave and being a complete idiot," he said, smiling at the adventurer's ineptitude. At Indra's shout, everyone closed their mouths abruptly. This is now out of the functions of a normal adventurer. This is already a matter of life and death. In case you didn't notice, none of you managed to take down those two, and it was the same situation when those hands attacked Auraria. Why the hell do you attack something that is immune to your attacks? Money. Prestige. Huh? The adventurers only bowed their heads to Indra's scolding, as facing their current enemies only resulted in their injuries, their weapons and armor being destroyed, and nothing to gain. "I won't do it again," said Indra, pointing his firearm. "Retreat to Babel and get your wounds treated. Or I'll open a couple in your skulls." The adventurers, not wanting to face the fury of one of the adventurers who had managed to defeat the colossal hands in the past, did not hesitate to leave, some supporting others due to their wounds, while some unfortunately carried the bodies of adventurers who had perished in the Colosseum. Indra looked that no adventurers would stay in the Colosseum, but without noticing Alan got up and with his spear went to attack an Indra who was supposedly distracted, which noticed that the Catman would attack him from behind and stealthily aimed at the Catman, who was inches from sticking his spear in Indra in a slow motion scene, not knowing who was going to connect first. Alan about to throw a horizontal slash while Indra about to pull the trigger against Alan to send a couple of bullets in the face of the Catman, but immediately sees that something was approaching. Boom. He sees something approaching and immediately. Pause. The impact hits Alan's head, sending him crashing to the ground. Indra sees what attacked his enemy and immediately sees the traces of an egg. He said when he saw that the eggshell had green spots. But immediately a Jurassic-looking silhouette appeared inside that egg and immediately jumped to Indra's side and immediately. Foo. 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 A small character, like a martial artist, punched and kicked before the bearer of Joker's soul, ending with a Issei, shouted the little one, giving him the victory sign. Indra looked at the little one in surprise. "A monster escaped from the dungeon," said Indra. "No," Indra said, a voice inside him. "He is not a monster, he is Yashi, an ally of my world that Lumina consumed with the light." "So I'll have support," said Indra, giving a slight smile. "I hope I can count on you," said Indra, taking a battle position while in one of his hands he carried a knife while in the other his firearm ready to be fired, while Yashi nodded at what Indra said and began to do a kind of march as a way of waiting for the enemy's attack, which Alan and Lafia took positions to attack. Change of scene. The XD world. Senkiraro cafeteria. The faction leaders and the people present at the Phantom family cafeteria were attentive to the Smash Spirit's declaration. "Her name is Lumina," said Corin. "She is a being whose purpose is to consume and destroy with light in the dimensions in which she appears, just as it happened with our worlds." "Consume?" Rias said, confused. "What happened, if I may ask?" Michael said seriously. "It was practically what happened in that place they call the biblical underworld," Robin said. "Now we witnessed how the emissaries of Lumina Crazy and Master Hand subdued those demons and the infantry of the factions, but unfortunately any attack by their infantry is useless." "May I know why he's telling us this?" Auden said, intrigued. "Lumina's agents are made with a special magic that is immune to attacks from beings in the universe or world it invades, so that no being or even the gods of that reality will be able to harm them," said Chrome, "and that is something we learned very late when Lumina consumed our worlds and our bodies. So they are dead, so to speak." Ikakiryu said now, in response to what the spirit that resided in the love of her life had said. "That's right, unfortunately," said Min Min, "but somehow our spirits were able to transcend interdimensionally and to prevent other kingdoms, universes or realities from suffering the same fate as we had. We located Lumina, who already had other kingdoms to invade and consume, although I was pleased that some allies of our kingdom managed to survive the destruction that Lumina caused. So we're not the only ones suffering attacks from that thing," said Ajuka. "Interesting, knowing about other kingdoms or universes, it's something interesting and the dream of any being who is 100% dedicated to science," said Azazel. "We're getting a little off track," said Terry Boggard's spirit. "When we located that Lumina would begin her attack in another universe by sending Crazy and Master Hand, one of our allies went to the aid of that universe and took possession of the central pillar of that reality, and the surprising thing was that when he transformed, he was able to hurt Lumina's emissaries as they did that day in that city. Seeing that the defense of that reality was a success, all the Smash Spirits decided that we would defend the universes that were in danger because of Lumina," said Roy. "But of course, we wouldn't possess any idiot who would misuse our abilities," said the Redeed, remembering with great shame the wives of Jonas Lucifer and the conceited warriors of the faction's alliance. "Some Smash Spirits are in this reality, while others wander in the dimensions that are in danger for Lumina," said Chrome again. In short, Shiva said, now we are facing an enemy that the beings and gods of this dimension cannot even tickle, and the only ones who can hurt them are Issei Hyoudou, Rias Gremory, Kaneko Taoju, Ashen Phantom, Saji Genshuru, Seikvaira Bale and Sirzechs Gremory. This really stinks, he said, annoyed. This is not the time for your arrogance, Shiva Dono, said Freja sternly. It's not that, Freja, said Shiva, putting four of his arms on the nape of his neck and on the occipital part of his head, while the other two on his waist. I say this because if any of those damn things know about this information, they won't hesitate to take stupid measures to affect the only ones who can solve this problem. Even though we have made a decree that no supernatural should come near the city, I have a feeling that those shameless imbeciles will do something against them, said Ajuka, and more so that the majority of the 32 demonic houses still existing support them in their entirety. It's the same case in heaven, Michael said sadly. Despite my efforts, Gabriel's influence can cause them to do something wrong. Fortunately Raphaeline, Raziel and Zadkiel are on my side. Not to mention Grigori, Penemu has such a sick gift of persuasion that 99% of male fallen angels will obey her like dogs, including Shemhazai, said Azazel indignantly. Asgard is in the same situation, since Roswus became very popular, they will not hesitate to commit anything that she orders, said Odin. Only the 13 Valkyrie sisters, my wife Freja, Thor, Vidar, Balder, Heimdall, Hela and Tur have remained firm. We are losing allies because of my ex-harem, said Issei, very dejected and very angry, but then a hand rested on his shoulder reflecting his beloved Rias. Issei, everything will be fine, said Rias, also indignant, but in front of the brunette, the Redeed gave her a smile that could calm her discomfort. If they gain allies in quantity, what should we do? Gain more allies in quality. I couldn't say it any other way, Robin said proudly of her carrier. Remember that quantity is not synonymous with quality. An army of 100,000 soldiers can easily fall for a battalion of 100 very well prepared warriors. So what should we do? Said Ashen Phantom, motivated by the words of Rias and Robin. Strengthen ourselves and master the abilities of our smash spirits, he said, smiling at Corrin, who smiled back as a sign that he agreed. Then the situation will be like this after their classes at the school they will start their training, said Ajuka seriously. Issei, Sirzechs and Ashen will train their skills with Ophis Ouroboros. Very well, the three said, to which the dragon lowly looked at them and nodded. I will squeeze out all your potential and make you great warriors, especially you, Ashen Phantom. You will begin to dominate and awaken your draconic nature, Ophis said coldly, and with a macabre smile. Sirzechs Gremory, it is time to leave the apron and the chef's uniform aside, and you will return to training. In terms of magic and fencing, Odin and Freja would like to train Rias-chan, Ajuka said. Technically, I would do it, but with the exile from the underworld orchestrated by those harlots and the Gremory family. We accept, said both gods, while Rias thanked them with a bow, since with their help, she would master Robin's magic and in the process, learn something about sword handling. And finally, I would like Shiva Dono to train Seikvaira, Kaneko-chan and Saji, said Ajuka. If there is someone who specializes in hand-to-hand combat at this time, there is no one like you, the god of destruction. Shiva, widening his smile at such a compliment from one of the mass of the underworld, stood up from his chair and faced the bearers of Terry Bogard, Min Min and Simon Belmont. I hope they meet my expectations, said the Hindu god to the nod of his new students. But to cover the jobs of my son, Rias-chan and the others in their absence, said Layla Phantom. No problem, Azazel said, smiling. Vali, along with Issei's friends and your future daughters-in-law can help. At what the cadre said, Vali spat out his coffee. Murayama, Kiryu and Caddis turned as chalk, while with the Ashen stalkers, they made a gesture as if a bucket of ice water had fallen on their face. What? The aforementioned shouted. Are you crazy, Azazel? The platinum-haired man reproached. Tell me what you can do apart from breaking your neck with your neighbor and admiring your girlfriend's ass, said the guy with a poker face. Well, said Vali, trying to defend himself. You don't know how to do anything. Rias, Issei and Sirzechs said mentally with an accusing look, which Vali felt with a chill. Oh okay, said Vali, totally defeated. Ooh, but will it be okay for us to work? Said Enigma. We have no experience in this area, said Marin very nervously. As long as they don't make me change my appearance, there's no problem, said Tharja with her voice reflecting annoyance. The other two girls, Yu and Mikumi, were hesitant. Look at it this way, said Layla Phantom with a smile. I'll be able to know more about the girls who are interested in my son, and at the same time, I'll know who will be the leader of his next harem. Everyone was stunned by what the Phantom matriarch said. Momo mom. What things are you saying? Ashen shouted very nervously. Eh? What's wrong? Layla said without any shame with a smile, since according to Ophis-chan, you have the nature of a dragon, and just like Issei-chan, the love of a dragon is so pure that it can love more than one partner. My dream of being a grandmother, I see it so close. Layla said, looking at a light of hope and her eyes shining with stars. You're not helping at all. Ashen shouted, terrified because he wasn't used to the customs or habits of a dragon, looking at his stalkers. Girls, please don't pay attention to her, it's just a joke. But he immediately closed his mouth because the girls began to emanate a sinister aura and a macabre smile appeared on their faces. Said Ueus. Favorite? Said Marin Kitagawa. Of? Said Mito Ikumi. Layla-san. Said Tharja. Ahehehe. Said Enigma with a smile that spilled saliva. The 5 girls looked at Ashen like a predator and their eyes shone like malevolent stars. If Ophis doesn't finish me off in training, my mother has my sentence assured, Ashen said nervously. We accept the job. Shouted the Ashen stalkers. Everyone laughed at this demonstration of love and healthy competition, except that a pink-haired girl who remained unconscious even now would have a difficult time competing for Ashen's heart. Poor Felicia, said Suzaku Himejima, smiling with some regret as he looked at the pink-haired girl who was still unconscious. She will have to work hard to have Layla-san's favoritism. We must help him, said Kunu very excitedly. I'm happy if he doesn't start a fire. The last time he tried to make a simple spaghetti, he destroyed 2 electric stoves, Ingvald said nervously. The girls of Issei's harem who would be at the Honey and Cherry Cafe would be in favor of helping the clumsy pink-haired maid so she could win in this competition to be Ashen's favorite if the cafe doesn't get destroyed in the process. Chapter 7. Chimney Mansion. Hestia, Loki and Freya, along with the families of the first 2, were watching through magic crystals the great crisis that Auraria was suffering, while Tiona and Lilaruka were healing Aryu, who was completely injured after being the victim of the attacks of those who were supposedly kidnapped by Master and Crazy Hand. Things are serious, said Hestia, seeing many wounded. What worries me now are the resources in your dwarf warehouse, said Loki seriously. According to Rivera's last count, we have exactly 5 months worth of food and drink. Of course, but if things don't improve in the slightest, the robbery will be our biggest concern, Freya said calmly. We made a generous donation of provisions to the guild, the adventurers won't be satisfied, said Tyan. The economy is ruined while the guild does not open the dungeon, said Makoto, that way we will not be able to afford or buy products for lifelong use. At least Hephaestus-sama is aware and decided to temporarily suspend your debt for Bel's weapon, Welf said calmly. Don't tell me anything, Hestia said, comically crying. When this returns to normal, he's going to ask me like the last tax collector who asked for the tax that miserable Apollo didn't pay for the mansion. Everyone including the goddesses looked at Hestia with pity when the door of the fireplace mansion opened, revealing 3 people carrying a 4th who was unconscious, who turned out to be Light-sama, said the goddesses and families when they saw the wounded god being carried by the half-elf who had her guild worker uniform completely torn and with a head wound that had been treated in time. Ina Tull and 2 of the daughters of this god, Naza Rias and Cassandra Ilion, who also showed their bodies full of wounds. They all went to God's aid. What happened to him? Hestia said when she saw her friend out of combat. We were making potions to heal the wounded when your son Loki appeared, Naza said with disdain, but accompanied by a blonde man with extravagant clothes and releasing fire magic from his hands, and without saying a word they began to destroy everything around them. Loki was shocked to know what her son was doing. She knew he was reckless, but she never thought he was a destroyer. Our home was destroyed, said Cassandra, but thanks to Ina-san who was passing by, who also suffered an attack on her home by them too. She helped us get Maichi-sama out of the rubble, and before falling unconscious, she asked us to take him to the fireplace mansion. And by the way, where is Bel-kun? Said Ina, looking everywhere. Bel and the others who defeated those hands went to stop those children who disappeared and are now destroying our area, Hestia said without flinching. Ina was scared by what the busty loli said. Don't worry, said Ryu, who was sitting with a sling. Have faith in Bel and the others, I know they will be able to stop these attacks. The others nodded at what the blonde elf said, easing the brown-haired elf's concern a little, hoping that the one she considered her best trained adventurer, but above all, as she considers him, her little brother, would come out on top in this fight. Coliseum of Hours. The ancient enclosure where the Ganesha family performed the monsterphilia, where now only ruins remained due to the destruction. The 4 beings confronted each other. On one side, the immutable Alan from El together with Lafia Viridis, adventurer supposedly kidnapped by Crazy Hand, head in front of the Mindra, the only member of the Freya family, against the small bipedal dinosaur that joined the battle to support the aforementioned, the charismatic Yashi. If we want to finish this well, we'll divide the work, said Indra looking at Yashi. I'll take care of the catman, you take care of the elf, okay. Wawu was the only thing, Yashi said while nodding his head. The Joker bearer and Yashi distanced themselves from each other, and like a duel in the Old West, only the wind could be heard blowing, each one with his chamberlain looking into each other's eyes, waiting for the first one to act suddenly. Crick. A small stone began to fall from the ruins, as if it were a marble. It began to bounce on the stands. I could only hear it falling as if it were a countdown, until the stone fell into the dueling arena of the Colosseum and was a few millimeters away from hitting the sand. Choo. The four fighters each ran to their opponent ready for battle. Audio plays. Indra, Joker, vs Alan from L. Alan with his unreachable speed approached Indra who was waiting for them. Pling. Alan throws a slash with his spear, but Indra manages to intercept it with a knife. It's true that you are the fastest adventurer, Rario could have said, Indra looking at his brother of the family. Indra pulls out his pistol and begins firing at Alan, moving away rapidly. The now captain of the Freya Familia began firing at the Catman, who successfully dodged a barrage of bullets. This won't work unless, said Indra as he stopped firing useless shots at Alan who, the moment his opponent stopped shooting, launched himself at him like a predator ready to impale his adversary. I've got you, Indra said, taking something out of his trench coat and immediately throwing it at the Catman. Smoke. Some kind of bomb had connected with Alan, who fell to the ground and began to resent what he had inhaled, so he brought his hand to his chest. You're mine, said Indra's voice that immediately. X2. He had connected a double kick against Alan, sending him to one of the walls of the Colosseum. He wanted to react, but Indra was already in front of him, beginning the festival of blows of the captain of the Freya family. Indra grabbed Alan by the neck, whipping him, and with tremendous speed, he slashed twice with his knife, sending him back to the ground. Even more violently, chasing him and not giving him a chance to recover, Indra proceeds to perform a vertical slash, throwing him into the air, and at the same time, he proceeds to take a great leap and finishes off the Catman with a horizontal slash, crashing him into the ground. But not satisfied with that, Indra begins to spin like a screw and takes out his gun again. The ANGX-30. A rain of lead fell mercilessly on Alan from L. Ending the bullet attack, Indra lands in style and immediately sees that Alan was totally inert to his attacks, but suddenly. Hyoudou. Alan begins to disintegrate into small wisps of light that headed towards where Lumina was. It's the same when those hands arrived, said Indra when he saw that the former vice-captain had disappeared before his eyes. The captain and only member of the Freya family had demonstrated his vast superiority against the Catman and decided to end his encounter against him in this way. Yashi vs Lilith. Bam. 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 Lilith launched spells at the small dinosaur, which she dodged with great skill. Yashi began to approach while dodging the elf's attacks, and just as he was close to Lilith. While Yashi shouted, throwing a couple of kicks at the elf, but she activated a magic shield that protected her from frontal attacks and suddenly. 5. I throw him to the ground, falling but recovering immediately. Lilith started her magic attack again against Yashi, who tried to get closer again dodging, and just when the elf had Yashi close before deactivating her shield. While Yashi jumps on the elf and immediately yeah! Shouted Yashi as he fell from Senton. 5. Lilith was thrown out to the floor of the Colosseum but. Brink. Something was heard spinning and suddenly, the egg where Yashi had appeared was spinning rapidly against Lilith and. 5. Impact against the elf who was beginning to show signs of pain but no sounds of it. Yashi sent the elf flying and impacting on the walls of the Colosseum, but that was not all. Yashi stuck out his tongue and swallowed Lilith, who immediately, the green dinosaur expelled her like an egg and immediately broke it with a tail flick, hitting the tail of this with the face of the elf, sending her to the ground again. But Yashi would not give his enemy a break. He immediately turned into an egg again and like a rocket went against Lilith, who could only receive the impacts of the small green dinosaur. It was almost 3 minutes of continuous attack until Lilith fell to the ground and didn't get up. Yashi came out of his shell and wanting to finish off his rival, he stops in his tracks when he sees that the elf was beginning to disintegrate into particles of light, indicating the defeat of Lumina's emissary at the hands of Yashi. End of audio. Both Smash fighters meet to leave for their foot when. Indra. Shouted a voice to which he looks at the origin of the voice and discovers the captain of the Hermes family. Asfi, said Indra, surprised to see his current partner with her Tularia sandals on, and immediately both of them melted into a hug and a tender kiss. I'm glad you're okay, Indra said Asfi with a rather unusual air since she was known as a calm adventurer, but in front of her boyfriend, she showed real concern that something bad might happen to him. Where are Alan-san and Lilith-san? They disappeared like that time we defeated those giant hands, said Indra, pointing to the areas where his enemies fell the last time. What we face are not the people you once knew. What do you mean? Said Asfi. I don't want to jump to conclusions, dear, but I think our friend up here has something to do with it, said Indra, pointing at Lumina. At that, Indra feels something pulling his pants, revealing Yashi, signaling him to get on his back. Is it a dungeon monster? Said Asfi, somewhat scared, but immediately Indra carries her like a princess and immediately mounts Yashi, who started the road to Babel. No, he is a great ally who will help us in this crisis, said Indra. Well, Asfi understood what he was saying. I hope you will help us, Yashi. Yashi. The little dinosaur shouted happily in agreement. Cafeteria Honey and Cherry. A day had passed since our protagonists, who carried the souls of the Smash fighters, began their training. But at the Honey and Cherry Cafe, things were back to normal. or so you could say. Due to the new regulations imposed by Issei's allied leaders and the others, they rebuilt the small cafe and created a fairly spacious building so that the new residents could settle in without problems, counting that they added certain luxuries to the new phantom residence and the new cafe. The next day after the meeting, the population of Kuo City wanted to meet their heroes who went to defeat those hands that destroyed Kuo City. Also some people who by force majeure left, said City wanted to know about those people. Outside the only cafeteria in the city, a horde of zombies waited outside the establishment, some armed with their cell phones ready to take pictures, but as soon as the doors opened, they were calmed by a delicious mix of smells. Freshly baked apple pie and blueberry pie, the house special breakfast also with its morning aroma fighting for dominance, along with the smell of freshly ground black coffee accompanied by cinnamon, calming even the most irascible beast. But what they didn't know is that Michael, the overlord of heaven, had already foreseen this and had given Mrs. Phantom, on behalf of the scientist of the heaven faction, Seraph Uriel, an elixir that when mixed with food and drinks, produced an effect similar to that of an incense that would cause temporary amnesia, and also a relaxant that made them feel at ease. But they also noticed the absence of Rias, Kaneko, Issei, Ashen and Sirzechs. But they noticed that the maid's staff had increased to Felicia's bad luck, having if in itself Suzaku Himejima, Laisha Astaroth, Iryuka Glaciula Bolas, Roy Gunbel Felger, the cold Seekvaira Gares, the mini-maids like the now ex-Yakai Princess Kuno and the dragon goddesses. Lilith. They had the addition of the cosplayer Marin Kitagawa, the famous streamer Enigma, the sensual gothic Tharja and the Kuadir, Uaeus. Making the pink-haired maid feel bad and a little self-conscious before the beauty of her love rivals. On the part of the chefs. Mito Ikumi joined the kitchen area alongside Ika Kiryu, Kaori Murayama and Yui Kadis, being of great help to Ingvold Leviathan. At the bar area, Volley Lucifer acted as a substitute for Sirzechs, who usually worked in the preparation of drinks. The albino did well for his first day, if it weren't for Mrs. Phantom who gave him a whole mixology compendium and some files on how to make different types of coffee. The poor albino spent all night reading and learning it all because behind the bar, he could barely stand and had to steal makeup from Rias so that the raccoon-like dark circles under his eyes wouldn't be noticeable. If it weren't for Albion taking possession of his body, Volley would have fallen asleep on his first day of work. Kirby for his part had two functions, one of them was to be the guardian of the cafeteria in case some supernatural intruder decided to infiltrate. This in less than 2 seconds would send him to his faction with several broken bones, and the other was that he could have fun and distract himself in the garden area. Mrs. Phantom taught him how to water the plants and some crops she had. From time to time Kuno brought him something to eat and he could take a nap while the shade of the plants cuddled him. The workday ended at 9 p.m. and everyone went to do their post-work routine, which was to go to the hot springs to cool off and have dinner as a family. After dinner, everyone went to their rooms to rest. But now we'll focus on the little rogue Kitsune. Kuno was lost in a dream world, sleeping peacefully on her futon. Everything was peaceful when she. The door to her room opened slowly and a glow began to illuminate both the room and the corridor. A multicolored sphere appeared at the entrance to Kuno's room. That sphere began to approach the little girl and said, "She is a girl with a heart full of joy and a desire to help people," said the sphere with a childish feminine voice. "I can help her without any problems." Immediately, the sphere began to penetrate Kuno's body through her chest, which resented the fusion a little. Immediately, the smash symbol appeared on the palm of the former Yakai princess's hand, as if it were a tattoo. Kuno's dream. The little blonde began to walk on what appeared to be a tropical island that seemed to be uninhabited. "It feels so lonely but at the same time, so relaxing. But what is this place?" the Yakai said quite calmly, but suddenly she heard the footsteps of someone approaching. Kuno turned her head quickly when she saw the origin of those footsteps and suddenly she saw a small dog-shaped creature wearing a secretary outfit approaching. From its face, it was clear that it had no hostile intentions towards Kuno. "It is an honor to meet you, bearer of my soul," said the little creature with a very friendly tone of voice. Kuno crouches down to be at the height of that creature and said, "What do you mean, carrier of your soul?" said the former Yakai princess. "I formally introduce myself," said that little dog with a bow without leaving the friendly side. "I am Isabella, Smash Spirit, and I have chosen you as my carrier. I hope we become a great team." Former princess of the Yakai faction, Kuno Hyoudou. The little lady was astonished at what the little dog had said. She had been chosen by a Smash Spirit, but it was quite cute and adorable. Without hesitation, she shook Isabella's paw as a sign that they agreed, while in her mind she will have to tell the leaders so that she can also be trained in her skills, which will be somewhat special. Outside the cafeteria phantom residence. 2 people wearing sweatshirts had arrived at the establishment. "This is where those people with the Smash Spirit live, right?" said a male voice. "There is no doubt," said a male voice. "Despite being fused, they can still leave a residue of spiritual magic. Smash. Nina, do you think there are more users just as interesting?" said the other person excitedly in an enthusiastic female voice. Each spirit has its own characteristic set of female voice now, so I can assure you many surprises. But it seems they are not here right now, and also I feel like a Smash spirit has just merged with someone inside there, said the male voice. Well, we'll come another day, your sisters and my mother-in-law must be waiting for us, said the male person leaving with his partner. I think things will get a bit hectic from now on, don't you think, Hyoudou-kun, she said, smiling as she kissed her partner on the lips while revealing the smash mark on her left hand. Hyoudou Uesugi finished returning her kiss and said, looking into his partner's eyes. They will be very interesting, Yitsuba said the aforementioned, while also revealing the mark on his right hand as they held hands and left the perimeter of the Honey and Cherry cafeteria. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.